I think we were pretty much at the forefront a number of years ago and stayed there and, went along and kept improving. But, the industry, I think, saw the value of going all in on player procurement, player development, and, we were doing fine, and we're winning and having good teams. So, we didn't really quite catch up.
Everything's fine. Everything is fine. The press conference yesterday was about becoming a leader, not catching up to everybody, but we did fall behind. So please don't misconstrue what I'm saying here. I want to take full accountability for everything that has happened. But if you push back against us for 1 second,
I'll tell you how we were.
I will tell you exactly how wrong you are and show you all of our successes that we've had with Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Brandon Kiley. That voice you just heard was Bill DeWitt Jr. yesterday at a press conference that left me very frustrated, Alex, and frankly confused. I feel like it's not a hard sell right now for me to understand, hey, we need to take a step back at the major league level to take a real step forward. I think Cardinals fans are ready for that. They're open to it. In fact, we have been talking about it for the last few years. I got a lot of pushback when I said I don't think fans actually want to rebuild. I think they want
a reset.
To win.
Whatever.
Whatever it takes to win. That's what they want. And fans now view the most likely way to win again as a rebuild. Cool. I'm open to it. But if you're going to go this route, can we be honest about what's happening? Can we accept responsibility for what has transpired and then allow our failures in the past to inform our decisions in the future? Because I don't think that's what happened yesterday. I think what happened yesterday was a group of individuals that are very proud of their accomplishments went up on stage and said, listen, you guys are saying that it's a lot worse than it actually is in our minor league system. Look over here. Don't notice the fact that we've got this guy that we just brought in to completely overhaul everything that we have done for the last decade in that regard. We're fine. We've been doing things great, and now it's just going to get better. Just trust us. Alex, what was your biggest takeaway from yesterday's press conference by the Cardinals that I left confused about? What was your takeaway?
Yeah, confused, and I think I left frustrated because, once again, I left a press conference feeling like the Cardinals were tone deaf. I mean, I'm sure you guys caught it, but just in that opening cut of DeWitt, he's essentially saying, like, well, hey, we were winning, and so we were just like, well, we don't really need to change anything while everyone else catches us. Like, if that's the mindset from an ownership group of a team, I don't want to know what that future is going to look like because you get complacent in one spot where you're comfortable with, and then it's like, well, we should be good here. But just the entirety of this press conference, we went through, 30 minutes, and then there were extras after?
Yeah. No. And extra.
Yeah. And
there
extra.
was just Mo.
That was odd, right?
Speaking to the media after the press conference in which they had called because they named his successor yesterday.
It was odd also where it was like one person talking when okay, we're going to wrap this thing up. And then, yes, Mo speaking. But it was 30-plus minutes of them giving details without giving any details. Like, they were talking about how the minor league system has fallen back and we need to catch up. We need to raise the bar while everyone else has raised the bar. Cool. Zero insight into the plans. Well, we're going to slash payroll. What does that look like? Well, we don't know what that looks like yet because of where we're at right now. And then you have the DeWitts talking about how, well, we never really fell behind. We were just kind of always competitive. And then all of a sudden, everyone else caught up. It felt a lot like, once again, talking down to the fan base, where you sat up there, you talked about how successful the Cardinals have been under John Mozeliak and thanking him for his entire career with one more year, which is still to be, gone through. But then there were zero insights into what the actual plan is for this organization moving forward. There was no 3-year, 5-year plan. It was just, we'll fix the minor league system, and then we'll figure it out from there.
That's where I left confused was, I don't know what their plan is for the next couple of years. And I said that there were two things that I wanted to know by the time that press conference and press conference 2.0 ended. One, who the next Pobo is going to be. All right, I got my answer. It's Chaim Bloom. I'm not sure I really like it, but it is Chaim Bloom.
Sure.
All right, the second thing I want to know was, okay, what's the plan? What are you going to do moving forward to get this thing back on track? And in fact, I just got mixed messaging of, well, our minor league system's it's fine. It's not in that bad of a spot. In fact, look at our young team. It came up through that minor league system. Aren't they fun? Don't you guys enjoy watching them? Aren't they fun?
The funny thing,
If
I
that's the
think
case.
I was their target audience for a lot of the things that they said because I kind of agree with some of the things that they're saying. And even I couldn't be convinced of what they were saying.
That's what's confusing is, okay, you're going to tell me, look at this fun young team that came through this minor league system that's not broken. No, it's fine. Yeah, we're holding this press conference because it's broken.
Yep.
What?
Yeah, all the guys that just went through the system are here, and they're exciting, and they'll lead us to success.
Yeah.
But yet our entire system that they just went through is broken. But again,
And also because they're not good enough, we need to sell off all of our good players because our young players aren't good enough.
And by the way, the
That
fact of the
came
matter,
through this great system.
But again, they're trying to sell us on the minor league system is broke, but they were asked 3 separate times by 3 different reporters, well, what about the minor league system is broke that you need to fix? Well, we
I want to
just
play this for you.
Go ahead.
Because Bill DeWitt Jr. was asked specifically, and I think that I included Katie's question in this because I think it's a really good one and an important one, honestly. It was the question of yesterday's press conference, in my opinion, especially coming off of Katie's piece, which I promise you the Cardinals have read. I promise you. Here's the question and the answer in its entirety from yesterday's press conference. I thought this was the single most important moment that came from that presser.
From an ownership's perspective, how did you come to the decision to allocate the resources the way that you did and ultimately pivot away from funding player development to essentially avoid an outcome where such a dramatic reshift is needed?
I'm not sure I would agree with the assessment. There's been a concern for the years. We've done pretty well in drafting and developing players historically. The bar has risen, as Heim would say, and there's much more analytics now attached to it. You look at our team, where did these players come from? We've got, I could be wrong about this, but I think I saw that our 6 young players played the most innings this year of any other team's 6 youngest players. So obviously we've had success in that model, but things move and change. And as Heim says, if you don't keep up, you're going to fall behind. So this is a matter of catching up to a degree and building to a degree.
He found like 3 different cliches to use and just used it in that 60-second clip.
Yeah.
So
with no answers.
again, I think I'm a little bit more on his side in this regard. I actually don't think the Cardinals' player development system is completely broken. Now, I think their pitching pipeline is. I think their pitching pipeline has been a disaster for like 5 years, and all of us have been looking at that and being like, hey, this is like, there are alarm bells that should be ringing inside of the front office, and it doesn't seem like they're catching up to it. They don't seem to be recognizing it, and it took way too long before they did. So that part, like, let's set that aside. Position player-wise, Alec Burleson's a good player. Not a star, a good player. Went through their pipeline and has succeeded at the major league level. Mason Wynn, I think, is a good player. Brendan Donovan, good player. I know people will hate me for this. Lars Nootbaar, good player. Needs to stay healthy, has issues with that. But overall, productive big leaguer, plays good defense, good base runner. And if you just look at the offensive numbers, I know people hate his batting average, gets on base at a really high level, hits for a little bit of power. It's a good position player to have on your roster. Not a star, though. Pedro Pajes, perfectly adequate. Major league backup catcher. Ivan Herrera, good hitter. Lucan Baker appears to be like a nice bench bat at the major league level. Nice to produce those guys from your minor league system. Thomas Sajaci was not a finished product when you got him. Appears to be a potentially decent big league player. So, like, what he's saying there is not entirely inaccurate, but that's not the time to say it. And this is what was so frustrating about yesterday to me, Alex, is this was your opportunity to come out and just show a little vulnerability. Like, we don't do a great show every day. Breaking news, everybody. There are some days where we're just not on our game.
Shots fired.
We don't sound our best.
Maybe
and like
you.
for whatever, like maybe something happened at home. A baby woke up in the middle of the night, right? Like there's explanations that can make sense for it. You know what you shouldn't do? Make excuses. Just say, hey, listen, I wasn't at my best today. I got to be better. And that's what the Cardinals could have done yesterday. Just take your medicine, dude. When somebody comes out like Katie does and offers you the opportunity as an organization to say, we haven't been good enough and we have to be better, especially when you're up there announcing we are going to have this crazy amount of investment that's going back into the minor league system, which is an admission of fault because you had not been doing that previously. Just say, and make it simple, take the humble pie, eat it, and accept it and move forward. Say, hey, listen, there was once upon a time we were a leader in analytics, we were a leader in development, and we are not there right now. The St. Louis Cardinals should always be that, and so we are going to invest whatever it takes to make sure that we become that again. Boom! Done! End of story.
That was pretty
Cardinals fans look at it and they're like, you know what? I kind of liked that answer. And you move forward because you took your humble pie, and you don't have to say like, hey, we failed, we're terrible, or anything like this. Just say, this is what we're doing to get back to being the best, because that's what the Cardinals should be. But they can't do that, man, because they have to say, well, you're being a little unfair with that, because they can't accept accountability. They can't accept responsibility for how they have arrived at a place where over the last 10 years, they have missed the playoffs more times than they've made it. What are we doing here then? Like, what was yesterday all about if not that? So that was the thing to me, Alex, that quote right there that stood out to me the most, that really chapped my ass a little bit.
Yeah, well, I'll give you another one that really chapped my ass a little bit later on. So, because after the first press conference, I wasn't satisfied enough, I figured why not indulge myself a little bit more? So I watched the presser after the presser, and then I watched the one-on-one that Jim Hayes did with Mo. And Mo is essentially talking about, well, why do one more year of this? And Mo said, well, that wouldn't make any sense, because then you'd have to fire me and bring somebody else in, and then they'd have to hold the hand of Chaim Bloom until he's ready to take over. And so it's easier for me to make a smooth transition to let Chaim Bloom take over. Talk about talking down to the fans, but also pumping yourself up of, well, I got to hold his hand through this because Chaim Bloom's never done this before. He's never taken over a successful franchise. I don't think they understand that fans are frustrated that Mo is carrying this team one more year
100%.
to Chaim Bloom. And then we're going to just stand up here and be like, well, we want to thank Mo for all the success. And look, there's been a lot of success with Mo, but these last few years hasn't. And then you're going to double down on that and say, well, I got to hold the hand of the next Pobo so he has an easy transition. The dude has run franchises before.
It's a great point by you, Alex. A great point. That was one of the other things from yesterday that
chapped my head.
What?
It all chapped my ass.
I actually liked that they announced their transition plan to Chaim Bloom. I would have preferred if
They just announced that Chaim Bloom's taking over immediately.
correct, and say, hey, listen, Mo's going to be here as an advisor, and anything that Chaim needs during this transition, Mo's going to be here to be able to walk him through it. If there's anything that, he needs that for.
You know what I think happened? I think the Cardinals saw the success that the Blues pulled off, where it was like, hey, Steen's taking over, and people are like, oh my God, that's a great idea. The difference is Steen has never done this before, and he was a fan favorite. You're keeping one guy in charge where fans are upset with, and letting another guy take over that has been a president of baseball operations.
Let's be honest, wasn't good at it in Boston, too.
It's just all
tone deaf.
They're trying to have both sides to every argument. Where they're like, hell yeah, we need to reinvest in our minor league system, but it's not broken. It's actually pretty good. We just want to be the best. Okay. We think our major league young players are pretty good, but they're not good enough for us to win, so we're probably going to have to move off from some of them. Yeah, our major league payroll, if you ask DeWitt Jr., not sure what it's going to be next year. If you ask Mo, it's definitely going down. And if you ask Bill DeWitt III, he can't even tell you what their revenues were last year. If you ask Bill DeWitt Jr., yeah, well, we won 83 games, so it really wasn't that bad.
They did.
But also, we want to get back to being really great.
So we got to tear it
And this
down.
is our only way to be able to do that.
So we're going to go be a 63-win team.
Yeah.
All of it was just very much well, we want this, but also that. Criticize us, but not too much. Here's Chaim Bloom, but here's still Mo. It was very, they wanted to be able to have their cake and eat it too. And so I want to discuss that coming up on the other side. Because the Cardinals are making very clear this is not a rebuild. Do not say that word. Do not say the word rebuild. This is not a rebuild.
When has that ever had success?
Not even necessarily a retool.
What is it then?
This is a refresh.
Like a car
My
freshener.
God, I love Febreze.
Really?
Makes bathrooms.
What does that mean? What does it look like? The Cardinals don't want to place any expectations on what that looks like. But we will. We'll do that next here on 101 ESPN.
Well, I think, again, like you look at the players on this team, really, like they're hard to replace. In other words, like who would you not want in your lineup? But, I don't see this as just a pure rebuild. I see it as a reset. There are some fundamental things we want to do differently in the organization. And then ultimately, as we continue to have success at the minor league level, at the player procurement level, then we can time it right to then try to reinvest at the major league level.
That was John Mozeliak yesterday in the press conference after the press conference with Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Brandon Kiley.
Wasn't as cool as it sounds.
This is not a rebuild. It's a refresh of the organization.
Say it with me, T-Bone.
They are going to transition
Brought to you by
things.
Febreze.
There were a lot of buzzwords yesterday. Refresh, change, reset. There was no rebuild, though. He does not believe that it is going to be that. And Alex, I actually believe them in this regard. I've said for a while now, I don't think that the Cardinals are in a position to rebuild, like truly rebuild. Because when I think about that, I think of a tank. I think of a tear down of the studs, and that would require them to trade, forget Contreras and Sonny Gray and Helsley. Yeah, of course, those guys, no doubt about it, have to be gone. Arenado, not bring back Goldie or any of the pitchers in their rotation right now that have options. Forget all of that. Of course, those guys have to be gone. What that would require is trading Lars Nootbaar and Brendan Donovan, just totally overhauling this thing. I don't think that's what they want to do. I don't think that's what they should do. I also don't totally understand what they plan to do here. And that's where I think things get a little bit difficult. Is what is this? If it's not a rebuild and it's a quote unquote refresh, how do you view the next couple of seasons for them?
Well, I mean, if you're going to call it a refresh, to refresh something is to give it a new feel, a new vibe, a new strength. And I don't see this team adding anything to the major league roster.
Can it be a new feel, a new vibe, a new idea with just if they were to this offseason, I don't know that they're going to be able to accomplish all this, but if they were to trade Nolan Arenado and they trade Miles Mikolas and they trade Ryan Helsley and they get rid of some of these older veteran players that made a lot of money, and so next season you go in truly with almost every player on your roster being under the age of 30, can that have a new feel for you? If it comes with the same president of baseball operations for one more year and the same manager for another year.
I mean, would it have a new feel? Absolutely. But it's going to have a new feel of this team's going to be bad for a couple of years until they start to draft and develop and find the right players to make them better again. I guess the better question to probably have asked there is, do you view yourself as being competitive again next year? Because if you're trading all those pieces away, let's just start with...
I think their answer is no.
It should be.
Because Mo said specifically, we are not putting all of our resources on the table next year to be the best team possible at the major league level. And when you say that, I think that answers the question that you're asking, Alex, without directly answering.
So to have a refresh, I'm not going to walk into next season being hot damn, this Cardinals team is going to be fun because they've got all these young players in. It's going to be interesting, but you know what the season is going to look like. It's not going to be pretty because you're relying on a lot of guys to continue to develop at the major league level.
Isn't that what the Blues have been? And you've liked that. To be fair,
yes.
If we're being candid here, you have enjoyed what the Blues have done, and that's essentially what the Cardinals are saying they're going to do.
This offseason, I've enjoyed it. The last 2 years has not been fun.
You liked last year. You were excited. You thought they had a potential to make the playoffs. You thought it was an interesting team.
I thought it was an interesting team, but you still knew where the process was at. You were still a few years away.
That's where the Cardinals are going to be next year, is what last year's Blues were.
If they have the offseason that the Blues just did, that's where I got excited.
That's not what I'm saying. I think last year you were excited.
I wasn't excited. I was
go back and listen to the cuts because you got mad at me and T-Bone.
I was optimistic that they could make the playoffs because I didn't think the Western Conference was that good around them. But they had some pieces. We were all excited about a Jakub Verana. We thought that maybe it could be good. There were pieces that you could see kind of what the upside looks like.
Can I say that about the Cardinals?
Sure, if you want to be optimistic about it. But I just saw these players. I didn't see Verana last year. We saw Verana for 12 games the year prior?
Yeah, but the year prior, you were excited about Robert Thomas.
I just saw 162 games of all of these guys that can't hit with runners in scoring position.
Sure, but are you telling me now that there's just no hope for Jordan Walker or Nolan Gorman?
If you're plucking all of these guys out that got this team to 83 wins, yeah. If you're taking Helsley away, well, these tight ball games, I'm not sure I'm going to trust that. If you're taking...
I'm not talking about the wins and losses. I'm talking, and I know that sounds silly, but that's where we're at, dude. We're not talking about this team getting into the playoffs next year. I'm talking about the improvement from within, and if they do, maybe they end up becoming a little bit more interesting. Nobody saw the Tigers coming this year either. The Royals came out of nowhere. The reason why I bring that up is, Mason Wynn can be a good player. Alec Burleson can be a good player. I think Nolan Gorman still has the chance to be a 35 home run hitter at the major league level. I think Jordan Walker still has a chance to be a star. I think Loris Nootbaar, if he stays healthy, could be a guy that next year he gets like a 770 OPS-ish, somewhere around there, gets on base like 36, 37% of the time. It's a pretty good player at the big league level. Ivan Herrera, I could see next year hitting 290 at the big league level. Like, that's not me being overly optimistic. That's basically what these players were meant to become. Are you just out on all of that now?
No, I'm not out on it. I'm curious what it looks like because these guys are a part of the cornerstone. But I think there's two different ways to look at it. Is it exciting? Absolutely. But I also have to understand what it is. You could call it a refresh all you want. It's a retool if you want to go down the retool path. Because you're right, a rebuild is cutting everything out of this. If you're going to keep a lot of the young pieces in place, call it what it is. It's a retool. And was I optimistic about the retool with the Blues? Sure. Will I be optimistic? Yeah, because I'll see more Jordan Walker. I'll see more Nolan Gorman. I'll see more Ivan Herrera. But I also just witnessed this team that when they went through rough spells, they sent them down to the minors immediately.
That can't happen anymore. Like that's part of this.
But the same people are still in charge, and that's why I'm still concerned.
Totally fair, and I thought that was their biggest mistake yesterday. I thought the biggest mistake yesterday was not announcing a full transition.
Yeah.
And just being like, you know what? We are going in a new direction. And if you're going to call it a refresh, well, there's a way to do that. And the refresh would include Chaim Bloom overseeing all of that and him making the call on Ollie Marmol and him making the call on the farm director as well, which he's going to be doing. But like, hey, just put it all into Chaim Bloom's hands. If you think he's the next guy, let's see it. Now is the time to make that switch. They didn't do that. So I understand the pessimism, Alex. I really do. But the reason why I brought up, like, are we just out on all of these Cardinals players, the young players now, is because if we are, next year's going to be miserable, dude. And I'm not. I still think there's hope with a lot of these young guys within the system and that are already at the major league level. But now is the time to find out. That is the one, like, yesterday what they said made me frustrated because I don't think their job was actually that hard to sell. I really don't. I think if you had sold Cardinals fans on, we are going young, we are going to find out once and for all what these guys are capable of at the big league level. And I did like what we heard on the return from John Mozeliak in the press conference after the press conference that he held, not with Valley Sports Midwest, but the one that he did with all of the media that was assembled.
There were three of them. Yeah. There were three of them.
I did like that he said, hey, when it's time, we are going to reinvest in the big league club. And I think that's maybe for me the hardest thing to understand is because they don't seem to have a timeline on all of this. They're not willing to put that out there. What are we talking about timing-wise here? Like, are you just taking a step back next year to then in 2025 or 2026, excuse me, push again? Are we talking about taking a step back for the next 2 seasons? Are we just getting the books fixed and then in 2027 or 2028 you're going to be like what is the expectation? Not just for next year, but for the organizational philosophy moving forward. And I don't know the answer to any of that questions or any of those questions right now. Something that I would love to hear from Mo, and if we get the opportunity to talk to him, we certainly will ask that. But that's where I think some of what they explained yesterday fell a little bit flat for me.
Yeah, and that's where I have a tough time kind of really finding this refreshing is I don't know if their young core is really that good. Their Pythag this year was at 76 wins. I think with the young core, they're a 70, 75 win team.
I agree.
And I find that tough to get excited about. Like, I don't find the Mason Wynn, Brendan Donovan, Lars Nootbaar experience all that exciting because they're just good ball players. They're not great. And I think when you don't have a timeline on it, and if you want me to be honest, my reaction when most of, at some point, yeah, we'll kind of push again. I'll believe it when I see it.
Totally
I've
fair.
seen multiple teams do this whole, we're refreshing the books. Give us like 3 years and then we'll go spend. Guys, I'm still waiting on the Pirates to spend again. They did that in 2015 after they tore that team apart.
They're saying it right now. They're saying, hey, we're going to spend this offseason.
So,
and Red Sox fans are saying, yeah, we've heard that before.
So it's hard for me to kind of get excited when I look at the young core, and though I'm a little bit higher still on Jordan Walker, he's the only guy I think has star potential. Outside of that, they've got just a bunch of nice pieces. But nice pieces don't win you ball games. Stars do. And do I want to watch a 70 to 75 win team for 3 summers? No, I don't. And I'm skeptical of them going back in and saying, okay, the books have been reset. Chaim Bloom's back in charge. Let's push. No, I've seen Chaim Bloom run things in Boston. And maybe it was ownership. Well, why would I believe that ownership is now going to push all of a sudden again after they've reset their books and they've brought in all this money? And their RSN situation is not going to be just a simple snap of the finger and it's fixed just like that.
Well, ownership can't push because they're investing everything into the minors. And we just learned that the reason the minor leagues fell apart was because they've put everything into the major league team.
Yeah.
They can't do both at the same time, apparently. I want to get Katie Woo's perspective on this. She's our Cardinals insider for 101 ESPN and also The Athletic. She wrote a good piece over there earlier today. You can follow her on Twitter at Katie J. Woo. She's going to join us coming up next to give her perspective of the press conference yesterday and what it all means moving forward. Katie Woo next year on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario back with you to talk about my friends over at Classic Air Care, making people comfortable since 1926. Don't just believe me. I've been using them since 2016. Believe the 4.8 rating up on Google reviews. Over 2,500 of them, like Derek, who sent one in that says, took great care of us from Classic Air Care. They even showed us a few things to keep an eye on throughout the winter and summer seasons. Frank was the best. He's super friendly. I highly recommend them and have already scheduled my next maintenance appointment. This is why you need to call them today. Whether you have a unit that you're fine with, it's in good condition, great condition, maintain it with their maintenance agreement. Maybe you're in the market to purchase a new one. Use Classic Air Care. They're going to walk you through the entire process. They're going to be upfront, honest, knowledgeable technicians are telling you what you need for that unit rather than just going to get the biggest and brightest thing for your HVAC system. Plus, there's financing available. If you need to get one, call Classic Air Care today. You can do that, or you could schedule online at classicaircare.com. Just tell them Alex Ferrario sent you. It's Classic Air Care and classicaircare.com.
Terry Hendricks here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. The Major League Baseball playoffs get underway today at 1:30 as the Tigers visit the Astros in Game 1 of the AL Wildcard Series. And then you'll have Royals at the Baltimore Orioles, Mets at Brewers, and Braves at Padres, as those are the wild card matchups. And tonight here on 101 ESPN, we've got the Blues back in action as they take on the Columbus Blue Jackets. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 6 o'clock with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale. Then Alex and Joey will be on the call for Puck Drop at 7. This Sports Update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet, Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Alex, I thought the moment of the press conference yesterday was when Katie Woo asked Bill DeWitt Jr. about the Cardinals minor league system and when they ended up deciding that it was time to invest less in the minor league system. And Bill DeWitt Jr. said, well, I would push back against that. I think our minor league system has been fine, and then promptly explained why their minor league system is not fine and how other organizations have passed them. It was a great question by Katie Woo. It got an interesting response, and I think it told us a lot about the mindset of the organization right now. Katie Woo, who asked that question, is joining us now via the 101 ESPN hotline. You can read her great work over at The Athletic and follow her on Twitter at Katie J. Woo. Katie, appreciate the time as always, especially coming off of whatever that was yesterday out at Busch Stadium. What was your takeaway, your biggest takeaway from that press conference, the end of season press conference with the Cardinals yesterday?
Well, honestly, I walked away with it knowing that there was a plan, right? We know the succession plan for the St. Louis Cardinals. We know 2025 will be a transition period. We know Mo is done after this season for sure, and Heimblum is going to be taking over for the next 5 years. We know there is a plan to get back to modernizing player development, adding staffers and technology, but we don't know to what extent. That's how I kind of went away from that press conference was, well, there's a plan. We just don't know much about it. And I thought Heim did a nice job in explaining, like, what is important about player development. I thought Mo was okay in kind of revealing his succession plan. I would have liked to know, and I'm sure fans do as well, more details to what that plan is. Yes, we know 2025 transition. Get it. Honestly, I'm on board with that. But what are they doing in their plan to ensure this transition period actually brings success? That I would have liked to know much more about.
That was the main part for me, Katie, was sitting there listening in 30-minute press conference, and it felt like at the end of it, they told me that there's a plan. They said that this is what's going to happen, but I never felt like we found out details specifically about the minor league problem. They said there's an issue with the minor league system, and Chaim Bloom has been evaluating it all season, but then when they were asked 3 separate times, I think you asked once, they didn't give an answer as to what was wrong with the minor league system.
Right, exactly. And I think that's what fans were frustrated about because, look, if there was nothing wrong with player development, if the Cardinals didn't fall behind or drop the ball to some extent, if player development was fine, well, Chaim Bloom wouldn't have been hired in January to essentially audit the entire program. If player development was fine, the Cardinals wouldn't be looking at a transition period and focusing on their youth and looking to improve that going forward. If the player development was fine, we wouldn't have been having a press conference yesterday. That was the whole reason all of us were in the room yesterday. So to just say, oh, player development is fine, look, have the Cardinals continued to produce major league players? Of course. Have they done it to the extent that they used to? And have they absolutely fallen behind in terms of modernizing technology, using analytics, and overall just failed to keep their system intact? Absolutely. That's why we were there yesterday. So, yes, it's great to admit that there is a plan. How did they get there in the first place is what I would have liked to know. And I did think it was a little disingenuous to just go up there and say, player development is fine. Here's a whole press conference on what we're going to change about it.
Katie, it seemed to me like an organization that wasn't willing to admit failure. Just overall, from top to bottom, and it really started with Bill DeWitt Jr. and his answer that he gave you specifically on your question, where he's like, listen, I don't feel like our minor league system is failing. I don't feel like we lacked investment, and then explained how they're going to start investing again. I think a lot of fans, the paying customers, would just like to hear the organization say, listen, we need to be better. We haven't done enough, and here's how we have failed and how we're going to be better. And if they're unwilling to say that or admit it publicly, it's really hard to believe that they're going to fix those things.
Yeah, you're spot on, because what fans want is transparency and accountability. And I think you and I talked about this, BK, before the press conference. We both said it was important for the organization to nail the messaging. And, you know, in a way, they are admitting that they've failed in some departments, because they are looking at an unprecedented time for the St. Louis Cardinals, where winning is not on the forefront of the organization's aspirations, right? Like, I can't remember the last time the Cardinals publicly conceded that, hey, our 2025 team might not contend, and we are okay with that. That is unfathomable. But to just go up there and say, as the four leaders, well, I'll exclude Heim from this for now because he wasn't a part of this, the three leaders of the St. Louis Cardinals, to, hey, we dropped the ball in this, but we're committed to making it right. I think that's what fans wanted to hear. And I understand what the St. Louis Cardinals have done, not just in baseball, but in professional sports, other organizations would kill to be the Cardinals, right? They're almost always post a winning season. They're almost always in playoff contention. They really are a model of consistency up until the last 2 years. Bill DeWitt's ownership group and John Mozeliak have done a lot of really good things in their careers. But this is a what have you done for me now industry, whether that's fair or not. And over the last couple of years, they've admittedly dropped the ball. I think fans would have liked to just hear them say that and get them back on board, because I don't think what they're doing here, I mean, you know, God forbid we call it a rebuild, their reset or whatever, is as bad as people might think that it is. If you ever hear me call this a refresh, something is wrong with me. Look, it's not as bad as I think maybe the outside people might think that it is. I think the Cardinals have a foundation to do this in a way where it won't take super long. But I think just a little bit of like, hey, we dropped the ball here, here's how we're going to fix it, would have gone a long way.
I guess the hard part, too, Katie, as a fan, you're hearing Bill DeWitt Jr. talk about how, look, we were winning and we just got complacent, is essentially what he said. With the minor league system, we just stopped focusing on it and other teams got better than us. And now they're telling us, well, we got to fix the minor league system and we're slashing payroll at the major league level. It's hard for a fan to look at an ownership group and say, okay, so you're basically telling me for the last 20 years you've been unable to do two things at once. How much faith can you have in that moving forward?
Yeah, that's a good point. And I'll go back to what you first said. For such a long time, the Cardinals were winning at the major league level. And how are you evaluated from your organization? You're evaluated at the forefront on what you're doing at the big league level. So it's easy, and I'm not excusing it, but it's easy. It's human nature for organizations, not just the Cardinals. You can go down the list to get complacent because they're winning and maybe redirect their attention from resources that need it. What doesn't need to happen is it doesn't have to be one or the other. And over the last couple of years, it became very clear that it was one or the other. And again, while I don't think Mo is perfect, we can go over his free agent signings, we can go over the trades. I can't fault him for making a decision that would guarantee that he made his bosses happy. If the major league club is winning, Mo's bosses are happy. So I understand that he might have felt, kind of in a bind in that situation. Cutting payroll this year, even though the Cardinals allegedly don't know what their revenue is, I thought that was a revealing part of their press conference as well.
Kate.
I know, you guys.
Am I really supposed to buy that one?
I liked how Mo just redirected it to Bill DeWitt the third, though. I like that. That was probably my favorite part. He's like, I'll let Bill take this one. But to get back to 2025, I don't hate what the Cardinals are doing. If you're going to transition and use this next season as a changeover period, yeah, of course it makes sense to offload some bigger contracts and get these young core everyday playing time. There have been blocks and positions for the last 2 years. We've talked about the roster construction. If you're going to transition and you're going to concede to 2025 and you want to offload some guys and build up your farm system in AAA, that's fine. If that's what next year is for, okay, cool. I actually agree with that. But there's a way to do this where in 2026, when Heim takes over, your transition period was only 1 year. There is a way, believe it or not, to fund your big league payroll and your player development at the same time. It really does not have to be one or the other. I'm curious to what that will look like in 2026, but I do, although it might be disheartening to hear, understand why they're doing this in 2025.
I totally get it. And honestly, Katie, we see the text line. You see your mentions on Twitter. We see what the YouTube chat looks like right now and over the last 3 years. People are ready for this. They are more than happy to buy into a refresh, retool, youth movement, whatever the leap it is that they want to call it.
It's not a rebuild, though. It's not a rebuild,
No,
guys.
of course not. That would be totally different. Like, they're ready to buy into that. And this is what made yesterday so baffling to me. The bar to clear was so incredibly low. And they could not find a way to clear it. Like they just had to go up there, be transparent, be like, listen, what we have been doing is not good enough anymore, and we need to be better to get back to contending for championships again. And we believe the best way to do that is to take a step back before we can take a step forward. But they couldn't even bring themselves to do that. And so, like, I don't know. Okay, Katie, last question that I had for you.
BK's a little angry, if you can tell, Katie.
It's not even angry
It's
so
the
much
three
as it
press
is, like,
conferences.
I feel insulted by what they went up there and did yesterday.
Sounds
Like,
about right.
I feel like fans, for the most part, feel insulted by the way that they discussed things yesterday. And frankly, Mo was the one that was the most transparent up there. It's just,
Mo was fine. I had zero issue with what Mo was saying or what Haim was saying. It was the other half of the presser. That
yeah,
I
which
was not
unfortunately is the ownership group.
Yeah.
Okay. Katie, I did want to ask you, because we had a little bit of discussion in our last segment about, what does this mean for the Cardinals next year? Because I actually agree with you, Katie. I think this can be pretty quick. I think you can kind of take a little bit of a step back, shed some payroll, and I'm not totally sure it makes you a significantly worse team by shedding some of the payroll that they might have to move on from this offseason. What are your impressions on what their plan is for, like, the next 2 years in terms of what this looks like on the field for them at the big league level?
Yeah, if there was one thing I did agree with ownership was that they do have a young core that they can build into the foundation and making sure that they're set in their young careers going forward. And if that's what the next 2 years look like, if you're investing in guys like Mason Wynn, Brendan Donovan, Lars Nootbaar, I mean, you saw what Matthew Liberatore and Andre Palante can do, Ryan Fernandez, Michael McGreevy 3 starts in, but those looked pretty good. Right, there's a way to develop these guys at the major league level, and while for a very long time we've had to hear that the major leagues are not for development, and I agree, if you're in this transition period, this is the time to do it. So the plan to build up this youth core and have them make their mistakes and take their lumps in 2025 and into 2026, I'm okay with, because the only way you're going to figure out if this is the core, the future core of the St. Louis Cardinals, is to play them every day. And you can't do that when you also have a bunch of hungry veterans ready to go to the postseason and win. And I don't fault them either for that. Of course they should want that. So I get the direction they're taking. Hey, let's let some of these guys go. We're not bringing Paul Goldschmidt back. He's 37. He wants to win. He's also maybe blocking first base, and we need to know what we have in Alec Burleson or Luke and Baker. Go down the list, right? Take your pick of any of the older guys or any of the older pitchers. You need to know what you have in these players. So if that's your plan in 2025 and figuring it out, again, I'm on board, and I think a majority of the fans would be as well. To me, it goes into 2026. Like, when Chaim Bloom takes over, what is his responsibility going to be? And honestly, guys, yes, it's a youth movement next year. I don't think it's like a 65-win youth movement. I think that there's a higher bar from that. Do I think that they're going to be like postseason juggernauts? Of course not. But I don't think that this is a team. I mean, you said it, BK, where they're that much worse next year. I think there's a way that they can play semi-compelling, semi-competitive ball. They're kids. They're young. They're going to make mistakes. But I don't think next year's roster is going to be like Colorado Rockies bad by any means.
Well, it can't be that bad, right? Can't be that bad at all.
Can't be.
Katie, I got one more, because there was a comment from Mo that I just kind of found tone deaf, and it frustrated me a little bit. He was talking with Jim Hayes, and Jim asked him about, why Mo coming back for one more year, and Mo kind of snarkily said, well, if you get rid of me, you have to bring somebody in for a year, and they've got to hold the hand of Chaim Bloom until he's ready to take over, and where I can just easily transition him into being the president of baseball operations the year prior. It felt tone deaf, because it feels a lot of Cardinals fans do not want Mo running it for one more year, and him feeling like, well, I'm the one that can easily transition Chaim Bloom in. It just didn't sit well for me after that press conference.
I hear you. And, a lot of it maybe is delivery, and fans are just, they're tired of Mo, and he knows it. Now, whether I think that's fair or not my place to say, but I do say that I agree with this transition plan, because if Chaim Bloom is responsible for overtaking the future of the club, he should spend all of next year overseeing player development and the upgrades that desperately need to come. I mean, he's the perfect person for what they need him to do in 2025. His expertise and resume speaks for itself. And I thought what he said at the press conference was actually kind of like a breath of fresh air, because he sounded so sure of what he was talking about, and there were no excuses. But he also was able to say it in a positive way. Now, it does make no sense to just bring in a new president of baseball operations if you already know that Chaim is coming in 26, right? Like, why bring in a guy for 1 year? Mo's job next year is to trade some guys be in charge of the roster decisions. I know him and Ollie Marmol are still going over some coaching decisions, and essentially just ensure that this organization is ready for a new leader. Do you guys really think that this is something that Mo wants to be doing? Do you really think that Mo, who's for decades been like this such prominent figure, a beacon of being competitive, is like happy that he's conceding that this team isn't going to be good next year? Of course not. But it does make sense for him to be the one that says, hey, I'm going to make sure that everything is okay when Heim takes over. I get fans are like, hey, well, you're the one that got us into this mess. Sure, he's going to be the face that wears it, but it really doesn't make sense for me to go get a new president of baseball operations, a new manager, when a whole new front office regime is coming in 2026 and is going to make those changes anyway. At this point, let Heim focus on the minor leagues, let Mo be responsible and trusting to ensure that the organization is in a good place next year. And, just enjoy the ride in 2025, whatever that's going to look like.
Ooh, that ride is going to be like riding on 2 spare wheels on the back.
I'm sure it'll be great.
It'll be a lot.
Hey, Katie, we appreciate the time as always. Thanks so much for your insight today. We'll certainly be reading all of your great work as it goes along here in the off season, which is it's not the normal kind of excitement that we have here in St. Louis, but it will certainly be eventful for the St. Louis Cardinals. So we'll be reading you over there, following you on Twitter at Katie J. Wu. Thanks for the time as always.
You got it, guys. Have a great week. We'll talk soon.
Absolutely. That's Katie Wu joining us as she does each and every week throughout the Cardinals baseball season here on BK and Ferrario. Certainly going to be a different kind of offseason for her and for the Cardinals this year. Want to hear from you guys. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Questions and answers is coming up next here on 101 ESPN. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. If you guys have any Cardinals questions from the press conference yesterday, get them in right now on the Air Comfort Service text line, or other sports. We can do that as well. This one comes from the 314, Alex. Don't you think that the Cardinals need to keep some vets around, similar to what the Blues did when they had Shin, Sod, Binnington, etc.? In reality, shouldn't the Cardinals just be following the roadmap that Army and the Blues have set? Alex, what do you think about that? Do you think that the Cardinals should be planning to keep some veterans around?
I mean, I would, but I'm the king of the leadership in a locker room of this show, because I know some of you guys are like, shut up, Ferrario, which understandably so. Might just be the
I don't
hockey
feel
mind.
that only about this specific subject, but yes.
Yeah, well.
Agreed.
Mutual, buddy. Ditto. But I always go back to a comment, and I know it's a hockey comp, so bear with me here, but I always go back to what Marty St. Louis said when he was talking about Jake Allen, and they asked him, why keep Jake Allen around if he wants to be competitive? And he said, if you don't have guys who understand how to win when you have a young group, then those young players will never know how to win. And I do think that's important. Now, baseball is very different from hockey. Like, it is a lot more of the individual experience than it is the team experience on the ice versus on the field. But like when you go through slumps, when you suck for a month, you got to have somebody who can help you out of it. Or on the pitching side of things, when your certain pitch mechanics aren't working, or if something's not going right, you got to have somebody who can work you through it. And if you slash the entire leadership group, yeah, I think that's going to affect the development. Is it going to kill it? Absolutely not, because baseball is a little bit more individual than hockey. But I do take some stock in having guys around that understand how to win. And if you cut a lot of these guys out and keep guys like Nolan Arenado around, I'm not sure how much that benefits you.
Yeah, who are these guys that we're talking about, though?
Well, this is the thing for me.
That's what I find difficult. Nolan Arenado should be one of those veterans, but I don't get the sense that he's somebody that's...
I wouldn't cut Wilson Contreras. I think that is one of those guys that you should keep around your roster.
So the thing with Wilson is what we talked about yesterday with the playing time. If you're planning on doing a true youth movement, A, he's getting up there in age, and I'm not sure he's going to be good by the time that you're good again. And B, it means that you don't get to see what Pages and Herrera do behind the plate next year.
Do I need to see what Pages does behind the plate?
I want to see what Herrera is going to do.
I'm with you, Herrera.
And I think if you're going to keep Contreras, you're trading Herrera. I don't think Herrera is going to stick around if you have Contreras here. And so I think that if you had to choose between the two, given where the Cardinals are going to be next year, I'd probably choose to keep Herrera around. He's younger, he's cheaper, he's cost-controlled, and he's going, hopefully, to be good by the time that this team is contending again. So, the guy that I would keep around is Kyle Gibson. I think it's silly what they're doing with him. If they're going to decline his player option, I think you're just throwing good money out the door. Kyle Gibson's a good pitcher. He's not a number one, but if you're going to trade Sonny Gray this offseason, I would like a veteran in that room.
Those are the two guys that I'd keep.
Eric Fetty, to me, does not fit into that category. Yeah. I would try to trade Sonny Gray. I would try to trade Miles Michaelis. I would keep Kyle Gibson for all of the reasons. And it's $12 million.
Yeah, I would keep Gibson and Contreras. And I mean, you can try and figure out if you want to try a different spot. If you play Herrera more, you use Contreras as the DH. I don't know if there's going to be a lot of guys competing for DH reps. But if there were two guys that I was told I could keep, it would be Contreras and Gibson.
I spend less for that. I would potentially bring back Matt Carpenter next year. See, I'd have no problem with that.
I don't think they need leadership.
I agree with you.
Leadership didn't do him good this year.
I think you need adults in the room.
What was the point of this year then? To me,
I'm talking about for the young kids.
No, but this is my point.
I'm serious.
I typically agree. Like when you go through a youth movement or a retool, you probably do need a veteran in that room. But that's what the veterans were here for this year. They don't need veterans now. If they were going to learn from the adults in the room or have the adults in the room, they should have learned it this year. Because that's what the whole point of the offseason was last year. Wasn't about
every year you need those guys, though?
No. I think that it's time for them to either... It's time for somebody to grow into that role, and I think it's Donovan's job
I don't think we need to get you can't be overly aggressive with this leadership thing because you just did it, and it didn't do anything other than 83 games, and most of the leaders were cut from this roster by the end of the season. I do think it's important to have a couple around.
I just am at the point now where the whole point of this last offseason wasn't about let's build the best team. It was about let's build the best leadership core in our locker room. Look at Matt Carpenter. He's like a dad to him, and Crawford's
they spent too much on it.
Is because they went too far in it, now they shouldn't need it because they went so far in it. They don't need any more leadership for these young guys.
We disagree on this. I don't think that you needed it the way that they did it this year. Like, your entire rotation is leaders this year.
Your entire bench was leaders.
Yeah, that to me was just, you're throwing away roster spots. I do agree with you that Brendan Donovan should be growing into one of those leaders. I would like another, like in each room, I would like a veteran in the bullpen, a veteran in the rotation, a veteran among your position players. And so if that means bringing back Matt Carpenter for a veteran minimum deal, whatever. Fine. It's one spot on the roster. I don't think that's the end of the world. It's the 26th man. It's the last guy on your roster.
No.
If that means bringing back Kyle Gibson to me, I have no problem with that. You're not taking away a roster spot so long as you make the other necessary changes where you're trading Miles Michaelis, you're trading Sonny Gray. I'm fine with that. I think they might be doing this thing that they did last offseason, but in the opposite direction where, okay, that didn't work. Now we're going to swing wildly in the other direction.
And you're going to go too young.
We see this in the NBA all the time where teams go super young with no veterans around, and then they just lose everything that they had previously instilled inside of the clubhouse culture. So I'm kind of in between the two of you. I don't think you need to swing wildly in the direction of leadership. I also don't think that you should have like none of it inside of the clubhouse. So really, forget the leadership thing. Veterans is what we're talking about.
You just need to have somebody who has experience through a 162 game schedule that just knows the ups and downs of a season. And you don't need 7 of them. You need 1 in each room.
I totally agree. And that's it. And what I think they're probably going to say is Miles Michaelis, we couldn't trade him. He's one of those guys.
And bring back Matt Carpenter.
I think that's probably what they're going to do. And I think what they'll end up saying is, hey, Brendan Donovan can fill that role for us on the position.
And I think they will bring back a Matt Carpenter on a league veteran.
I think they're going to put that role.
I think it's going to be Contreras / Michaelis. And like, I'm okay with that. You know, I don't want to spend another dime that you don't have to on veteran leadership.
I think that we're talking about them getting, like, I think we're giving them an out on being way cheaper than they need to be. I don't think they need to cut this much payroll.
I agree with that.
I think it's crazy that they're just they're going to cut $70 million in payroll, and we're just all okay with that. Unless they're legitimately reinvesting that, there's no way you can spend $70 million on your minor league system.
It
would be almost impossible to do so. You'd like build a new facility for that.
That's what they're doing in spring training.
I'm talking like a new stadium.
It's going to be awesome.
By the way, did anybody else think of that too? It's like, oh, we're going to be breaking ground after this training. Haven't we broken ground 3 years ago?
No, 7. The first time they brought up breaking ground in Jupiter with the complex that they are now building in 2025 was 7 years ago.
We didn't have $70 million.
We're excited to break ground in 2025. Wait, I thought we broke ground already.
The stuff that they're reinvesting in has very little to do with that. That's been planned for almost a decade, man. The stuff that they're going to do is like the technology at all of their affiliates, the coaching that apparently they're going to reinvest in, the performance side of things, and talking about like nutrition and like breaking down the data for the performance, like that kind of stuff.
PBJs?
No more. Flaming young.
We'll see.
Crab legs.
We'll see what it looks
Popping
like.
those on the flight.
Yep.
Coming up in about 15 minutes or so, we'll get into Bet It or Forget It. Coming up next.
Why'd you sound like that when you said it?
What a day that was yesterday, man. I can't believe some of the things that were said.
Really? Come on.
You can't believe it?
We all basically knew they weren't going to live up to expectations at that press conference.
We knew they were going to say a lot without saying anything.
And yet,
probably bring a tone to it.
I thought Mo was going to be the problem. And I know people are probably mad. I don't know for sure, but I would imagine people are probably mad at Mo today. But I think that's just because he existed more so than it was like the individual thing.
Mo showed up to that presser and people are like, son of a, come on.
Yeah.
I didn't help when Mo started like, hey, congrats, I'm back.
Yeah, but Mo, that tone thing didn't work. That's why BK didn't hear it, though. He was like, oh, what are you talking about? That one was fine. Mo's in that ultimate, like, F it mode, like a senior in college. His tie's loose, his shirt's buttoned down. He's like, I'm out after this year, boys. His
pants aren't even buckled.
It's in.
I didn't feel like he was that bad yesterday. Honestly. I did feel like there was somebody, though, that had a really rough day on the stage, and we'll tell you who that is next here on 101 ESPN. Hey, it's BK to tell you about my friends over at Victory Men's Health. It is time to unlock your inner champion, and the place to do so is at Victory Men's Health. You can check out all of the things that they could potentially help you out with on their website today at victorymenshealth.com. That's victorymenshealth.com. Whether it's unwanted weight that you have added over the years, you've been trying to get rid of it on your own, it's really difficult. If you need a little bit of help, they can do that for you at Victory Men's Health. Low testosterone, erectile dysfunction issues, men out there, it happens, and it happens early, sometimes as early as age 30 for people. And if you need help, they can help you out at victorymenshealth.com. For me, it was going out there and getting a micronutrient lab taken. They were able to check all of my levels. That included testosterone. I was in the lower portion of the normal range for healthy adults, but I did find out I had a vitamin deficiency, and pretty soon you'd expect they helped me out with that. They can help you unlock your inner champion, whatever that means for you, at Victory Men's Health and victorymenshealth.com. With Alex and T-Bone on BK. So yesterday, I didn't think Mo had that bad of a day. I really didn't.
Tone versus tone. I get it.
He explained where he's at. And listen, I get it. People really dislike John Mozeliak. His approval rating is as low as it can possibly get.
Did anybody else think BK was going to go, I don't want to get political?
I was going to say it's as low as Joe Biden's, but I decided to go against it.
Come on, man.
His approval rating is really, really low, all right?
I don't want to get political.
And there's just nothing he can do to salvage that. There's nothing. And nothing he was going to say yesterday was going to get fans back on board. I don't blame you for that. Like, as a fan, you have every right to be frustrated with him, frustrated with the team, want a new direction. I get all of that. What he actually said yesterday, like, he was transparent. He said, hey, payroll's going down. We're probably going to have to trade some of our players from the current roster. You didn't have to love what he said, but at least he gave you specifics. Can't say the same thing about any of the other three individuals that were on that stage yesterday. And Alex said that there was one person specifically for me that came across as I didn't really understand his perspective on any of it. And I think Bill DeWitt Jr. deserves a lot of credit for what this team has been for the 25 plus years of his ownership here in St. Louis. A lot of credit. But at a certain point, you do have to take an internal audit of what your organization has become, where you are flawed. And I thought they had done that. And I thought that was the whole point of the press conference yesterday, was to announce, here's what Chaim Bloom found as our deficiencies in our minor league system. Here's how we're going to fix it. It's a new day to be a Cardinals fans. Get excited. We're reinvesting in the culture of the team, right? Like, I thought that was what we were doing.
Oh.
And I thought DeWitt was ready to acknowledge some of the flaws with their model. And it was the opposite. And he almost like felt the need to defend their legacy as owners and felt the need to defend everything that's happened, even over the last 5 years when clearly they have lost their way. And this was one of the moments to me, as somebody that has a tone problem.
Oh, you caught this one?
That I even recognized as
Surprising.
like, ooh, a little bit of tone there, Bill. A little bit of
BK
tone.
had a moment.
You know, when you think about it, we ended up winning 83 games. You know, there was a positive. Young players, as I mentioned, who were a big part of that. I think it's an exciting team to watch and to follow and to see the other young players that are going to be coming up. If I were a fan, I'd be kind of excited for the future. I see what we have. I see what's coming. You know, change can be good.
There it was. There it was. It's buzzwords, man. I'm telling you. They should be handing out sheets of like, okay, Bill, at this press conference, don't say this phrase, don't say this phrase, don't say this phrase.
He hit the trifecta.
If I were a fan.
He said 83 wins was pretty good. Our young players are better than people are giving them credit for.
They're exciting to watch.
As a fan, you should be excited, which is essentially telling fans how to feel after, team wasn't very good.
I got Greg Amsinger vibes.
Between that and then him needing Mo to disclose that, yes, payroll is indeed going down. He was not willing to be that transparent yesterday, even though the entire press conference was about how we're going to slash payroll and invest in the minor leagues. Yeah, but now when
Bill DeWitt Jr. talked, it was an exciting team. It's young. We're going to make a youth movement and get back to what made us.
Directly, is payroll going to go down? And gave this word salad that didn't answer the question. And then Mo immediately hopped in and said, I'll take this one. Yeah, payroll's going to be going down.
He wasn't prepared.
And then said, and I'll allow Bill DeWitt III to talk about our revenues, which is clearly...
His mic was not plugged in, I don't think.
Which was clearly tied to the fact that payroll is going down, which makes sense. All of us can understand that. Revenues down, expenses go down, right? That's the whole idea of a household income or a baseball team, the way they operate. I get that. The answers from Bill DeWitt Jr. yesterday, Alex, left a lot to be desired, in my opinion.
Because I think a lot of Cardinals fans went into this and wanted to hear, like I had told you guys yesterday on the Rewind, that I don't really care what Mo has to say or Chaim Bloom has to say. All of that's fine. I want to hear what Bill DeWitt Jr. has to say, because at some point you have to take accountability on what took place. And there was no accountability. There was a lot of, well, we've been successful for a long time, and we just had a above 500 season once again, and John Mozeliak has done a great job, and we want to get back to what made us successful. We have to catch up with everyone else around us. This was never about the Cardinals taking a step back and like declining. This was all about, at least from Bill DeWitt Jr.'s point of view, this was all about everyone else around Major League Baseball has gotten better.
Would you like to hear what accountability sounds like? Didn't take place yesterday at the Cardinals.
This seems like a BK setting himself up for a cut of him saying something.
No.
You want to hear what accountability sounds like? I think I'm going to take the Buffalo Bills plus 2.5.
Oh, he's wrong.
Well,
I did too.
I was accountable on Monday for my actions when I was clearly wrong with that pick, along with Alex, who went 0-3 over the weekend and now is getting punished as a result.
Truth. Truth.
You're taking accountability for that. You're getting the punishment.
Always do. I've always said that about myself.
The Arizona Diamondbacks managing partner, his name is Ken Kendrick. He was on the radio this week, today actually, with the Burns and Gambo show in Arizona. Take a listen to this. This is what real accountability sounds like from an owner.
If anyone wants to blame anyone for Jordan Montgomery being a Diamondback, you're talking to the guy that should be blamed. Because I brought it to their attention. I pushed for it. They agreed to it. It wasn't in our game plan. You know, when he was signed right at the end of spring training. And looking back, in hindsight, a horrible decision, to have invested that money in a guy that performed as poorly as he did. It's our biggest mistake this season from a talent standpoint. And I'm the perpetrator of that.
I'm just going to go out on a limb.
I love what he said, though, of the accountability there.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say Montgomery's not going to be a Diamondback after this season.
Well, he's under contract, and he's got a $20 million player option. I'm going to go out on a limb and say, I think he will be a Diamondback next year. I don't know how you get off that money.
We'll find a way. After those comments, woof.
That, while direct and throwing a player under the bus, and maybe not a great way to go about business, that's accountability. He said, hey,
absolutely.
Buck stops here. I was the one that made that decision to bring in that player. And he took full accountability for it and said, listen, it was a terrible decision. It's a bad decision. Blame me. Put that blame on me. When was the last time, Alex, that we heard from the Cardinals just an admission of, hey, we messed up?
I couldn't tell you.
Because yesterday, when they had the press conference, and it was every opportunity was handed to them to just, hey, take some of this humble pie. Take some of this humble pie. Every time they said, no, shove it back in your face. You're wrong. We're fine. It doesn't have to be handled that way, man. It really doesn't.
Even Doug Armstrong has done that with the defenseman contracts that they've handed out. He did it this past offseason where they were talking about it. I couldn't tell you the last time that I've felt the Cardinals took accountability for actions that have gone south for them, because it's always been, well, look at our record. Well, look at our record. We'll get back to this because historically we're always a team that stays above 500 and is in the playoff race.
And they deserve credit for that.
Yeah,
I do agree with
but
them.
You can only go back to the past so many times when you have the present that is not trending in the right direction.
And that's the thing. Like, it seems like there is an inability to have both conversations. Like, there's an inability to say they have been a really great set of owners for this organization. And Mo, for all of his faults, and there are some that are clear and obvious, we can all see that, did a pretty damn good job for about a decade. And yet, like, we are falling short as an organization over the last 5 years, and we need to be better. And we can also admit that. And that last part is what the divide is right now between fans and the organization. And the divide is getting bigger, not smaller. Yesterday should have been a day that could have bridged that divide. Yeah. It could have. And instead, I think it made the gap even worse.
All you needed to do is walk up with accountability and honesty and say, we messed up, and we are making this better starting today, and walk away.
And when you don't go to that part that you're talking about of admitting those failures is when you get to the mixed messaging, right? When you have the Bill DeWitt Jr., who I agree came off the worst yesterday, go up there and say, well, hold on, our development system's not a problem. It's actually fine. Look at our young team. Isn't it fun and exciting? Well, that's not the point of the press conference, is it, Bill? The point of the press conference is we're slashing payroll because we need to fix our minor league system. We're going to reinvest that money. Well, that's because you're admitting failure, but when you don't come out and say it, what becomes is a just PR nightmare, which is what yesterday was, which becomes the issue of what we're talking about, where what's the plan? There is no plan. They didn't give you a clear outline for what their plan is and when they're going to be back at contention, and that's where the issue lies.
And I should be clear, like the Ken Kendrick thing, you shouldn't say that publicly.
I like it.
But
I like it.
There is a way to do that. Like, there's somewhere in between what he did, or he just threw a player under the bus. And like, if I'm a free agent, I have no interest in signing with that guy now. But there's a midpoint between that and what happened yesterday, where it's to use the example of the Jordan Montgomery signing. Hey, listen, that was my decision. It clearly didn't work for us. And if you want to blame anybody, that's on me. And we'll be better with those decisions moving forward. And if you don't trust us, I understand that. We haven't earned the benefit of the doubt. We're going to try to have a better process moving forward. Boom. Good to go. You took accountability. You're moving forward. You're not throwing the player under the bus the same way. The reason I wanted to play that is because of there is no more stark contrast between two styles of ownership and how they take accountability for their fans. All right. He's Alex. That's T-Bone. I'm BK. Coming up next, Better to Forget It here on 101 ESPN. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Bet It or Forget It. You guys give us a scenario. We will tell you if we are betting it or forgetting it here on BK and Ferrario. I'll get us started with this one, boys. Bet it or forget it. Wilson Contreras is in the opening day lineup for the Cardinals next year.
I'm going to bet it because I don't know if that's going to be a contract that they could trade. I know it's ideal probably in terms of money and kind of how he played with some freak injuries. Going back to where he wasn't signed by any team and the Cardinals took a chance on it, I wonder if teams are skeptical of that. Next year, I can see Wilson Contreras being traded away.
Oh, man, he's such a tough one.
I find him to be the most interesting / toughest.
Because I would think now that his defense has improved, and we've seen that over his 2 years, he would carry some value. Question is will the league look at it the same way? Because the league didn't want him 2 years ago when he was in free agency.
And he was thrown under the bus multiple times about being a catcher.
Yeah, better forget he'll be in the starting lineup. But I will forget it. I think he will be traded this offseason. I think somebody will look at him and say, you know what? Even if he's not the best defensive catcher, he's above average, and his bat is way above average, so we will take him.
I'm going to bet it. I think he's in the lineup next year. I think he'll be traded before the end of his contract. I don't know that it'll be this offseason. I could see them trying to do Sonny Gray deal this offseason, and I think Sonny Gray and Nolan Arenado are probably their front end. Got to find a way to move these contracts because they're the biggest money. So if you can move on from them, you save $65 million next year.
That phone call.
A portion of that, at least.
That phone call will be easy with Nolan. Hey, Nolan, we're going to trade you. Where do you want to go? L.A. Call the Dodgers. We want in Nolan Arenado? No. Okay. See you again, Nolan.
I don't know how they trade Arenado. Gray's easy to me. He carries a ton of value. Maybe you have to eat it like $1 million or $2.
If you're Arenado now, though, you have to be more open to it because you came to St. Louis because you wanted to win. You got out of Colorado.
I'm not questioning if Arenado wants traded. I'm questioning if anybody wants to trade for Arenado.
Well, that's what I mean. He's gonna be. I wonder if he's more open to moving to other teams than LA because of this.
If we've learned anything over the past month, it is that the Cardinals do not like to pay people to not perform for them, whether that's in the front office, coaching, whatever, right? And so what I will be fascinated by this offseason is if they are willing, as an ownership group, to pay down some of these contracts for players to go elsewhere. Because that's going to be something they have to do. For Nolan Arenado, if you're going to trade him this offseason, you will have to eat salary.
Totally.
That is the only way you can make it work, most likely. For Miles Mikolas, if you want to trade him and get most of his money off of your books, I bet you there's a team out there that's willing to spend $10 million next year on a one-year deal for Miles Mikolas. Because you pay that for any starter that is going to make 25 starts for you on the open market. You'll have to. But are the Cardinals willing to eat $8 million? I don't know. Are they willing to eat $15 million per year on Nolan Arenado? I don't know. Are they willing to eat, let's call it $10 million for each of the next 2 seasons on Sonny Gray? That's the question that I don't know the answer to just yet. But I think that's going to inform a lot of these decisions in the offseason, and those are mostly ownership calls. Alex, what do you got for us?
Guys, bet it or forget it. The most games played by a trio in the outfield next season for the Cardinals will be Jordan Walker, Victor Scott, Lars Nootbaar.
Forget it. I don't think Victor Scott will be one of the 3. I think they will go with Michael Ciani over him.
It's kind of where I'm leaning. I would forget it as well. I don't get it. I don't agree with it, but they seem to like Michael Ciani more. They seem to like defense more than offense. Michael Ciani, Pedro Pages at the catcher spot over Ivan Herrera. So I will forget it. I think it will be Ciani as the center fielder.
That's where I'm at as well. I unfortunately think it should be Walker, Victor Scott, Lars Nootbaar if you're emphasizing youth, but they made it pretty clear that they like Michael Ciani more.
T-Bone?
Guys, bet it or forget it. The Cardinals are in their refresh with a new Pobo voice coming in after next season. The Giants are in their refresh as well. Bet it or forget it. The Giants' future is brighter than the St. Louis Cardinals.
Sorry to specify here, BK.
All right,
I do.
Bet it or forget it.
I do it too, man. I need specifics.
Are you talking about for the next 5 years?
Yeah.
Because immediately, I think that there's a decent chance that the Giants really invest in their team next year.
They got money to spend.
So I think they will probably be better immediately.
Weird news coming out of San Fran. We talked about this yesterday. Buster Posey, technically an owner of the Giants. Yeah. He's going to retain ownership of the Giants. They just announced.
Listen to this.
So Buster Posey will retain his board seat, Greg Johnson says.
Listen to this, too. The San Francisco Giants will return
Is that allowed?
apparently.
Well, it is now.
I guess in the NFL, like Jerry Jones is the GM.
The Giants will return to emphasizing the value of scouts. I value scouts very much so. That's what Buster Posey said.
So here's the thing that's really interesting about that.
This seems like a minor league thing.
Both these teams are screwed.
Yeah.
Forget it.
I value scouts.
There is such a culture war going on within Major League Baseball right now. That's one side. Farhan Zaidi is the other side. Dude, the teams that are doing it best have both. And if you don't have both sides of that organization, you will fail.
Why has Major League Baseball come to the one or the other?
It's so strange to me, man. Like, not to get political, it's filtered through every aspect of our life where, like, you have to be on one side.
Yeah, that's true.
You can't be able to be somewhere in the middle. You have to be on the polar opposite. Otherwise, I think Major League Baseball is one symptom of that, where you either have to be an extremist on the side of data, science, a
nerd or a baseball guy.
Yeah. Yep. There is no in between. Yep. And the truth is, if you don't have both, you will fail as an organization. Yeah. The best teams going right now have both sides of the organization. So to answer your question, better to forget it. The Giants will have a better future than the Cardinals. I will forget it because I do think that the Cardinals, despite going about it in a strange way, have the potential to put in place a foundation of what is a winner moving forward. I don't know that the Giants have that. I think they have a couple of good young players. Beyond that, though, it's very flimsy.
I still need more specifics.
Can't I say the same thing about the Cardinals? Outside of a couple of young players, it's kind of flimsy.
I'm higher on their young players than a lot of other people are, clearly.
I think the difference, though, is the Giants can go out and get a star. The problem is, will they be able to acquire that star? They can do it. I don't trust the Cardinals to do that.
I think they're going to push while the Cardinals retreat. And that's why I think, like, when I say future's brighter, I do kind of mean the 5 years. I would bet it on the Giants part. I think they will have a better 5 year. Now, I don't know if Buster Posey actually going to be good at this, but especially now he's going to be an owner. Man. Well, hey, at least he's going to have the ear of the ownership group because he is a part owner.
That's true.
But I think you're gonna see them in the playoffs first before the Cardinals because I think they're gonna push the next couple of off seasons. Now, will it end up leading to the grand prize of them all? That I'm skeptical.
I think there's a decent chance that they end up having to go full blown rebuild. Like, after whatever this version of the Giants is, like, I think they're gonna push. I totally agree with you, T-Bone. And I think they're gonna push with free agency, trades, all of that. And I think it could end up being a pretty good team over the next couple of years accordingly. I also think that typically when you do that, there's hell to pay at the end of it. And there will be a true rebuild that's coming for the Giants, so it'll be a short, unsustained period of winning. All right, from the 314, better to forget it. From the 314, the Cardinals' attendance will be lower next year than it was this year. I will bet that.
Bet it. Yeah.
All right. Better to forget it.
I don't know if I need to explain that one.
I think everybody's
the
on
Cardinals will replace Goldie with Pete Alonso and make the playoffs next year.
That was funny.
If you missed I see what happened here. If you missed the Cardinals press conference yesterday, you can check it out on our podcast page, 101ESPN.com, or via the free 101 ESPN app. All of our podcasts are presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers. Also, how did you miss
payroll.
3 press conferences?
Yeah, they're cutting payroll. They're not going to be citing payroll. Forget it.
You can miss one press conference, but you can't miss the conference after the conference, and then the conference after the conference of the conference.
Who knows? There could be another one soon.
Better to forget it. From the 618, the Cardinals will sign a free agent this offseason.
Okay, I almost thought about this one.
At least $10 million.
Oh, forget it.
That caveat. No, forget it.
Free agent? Yeah,
they will sign a free agent this offseason.
I'll say bet it because you're going to bring somebody in.
Are you sure?
I'm going to forget it. I think they're actually positioned perfectly to not do anything in free agency. They might make a trade or two that kind of brings in one. Well, I mean, they're going to make a bunch of trades. They might bring in a couple of pieces that help the major league club in those trades. Yeah. I would be shocked if they sign one, let alone 2 free agents this offseason.
I'll take the field. If they're going to just get one, I'll take the field and say they get one.
I'm going to forget this as well. I don't think they're going to bring anybody in. Maybe
what's Jamie Moyer doing?
Probably be somebody like a
Rich Hill,
the equivalent of Riley O'Brien, but via free agency, or like betting low on somebody. Maybe somebody that's like rehabbing this season.
Oh, Middleton,
something like that. I could see.
Just bring them back.
Better to forget it. The Cardinals are back in the playoffs within the next 2 years.
Forget it. I think they've got nice pieces in this core. They need to get a superstar, and they don't have one.
You don't believe that.
I think 3 years. I do not believe within the 2. I
say you make it once in 5.
That would be my guess.
Coming up in 15 minutes, We're going to talk to our friend Gabe DeArmond, PowerMizzou.com. Mizzou has a huge game coming up this weekend. It's the first true test for them this season. Top 25 game on the road, 100,000 fans in the stands, and Gabe has recently made a move. He's no longer with the Rivals Network, where he's been for more than 20 years. Tell us a little bit about that. PowerMizzou.com. Gabe DeArmond joins us in 15 minutes. But next, the Cardinals are kidding themselves with this notion that they've always been a draft and develop team. We're going to go ahead and put that to the test next year on 101 ESPN.
Tanner Hendricks, New York Day Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. The Major League Baseball playoffs start today. 1:30 will be first pitch, and it's game one between the Detroit Tigers and the Houston Astros. Later on today, you'll have the Royals at the Orioles, Mets at Brewers, and Braves at Padres. All game ones today for the Wild Card Series. And tonight here on 101 ESPN, we got the Blues back in action as they take on the Columbus Blue Jackets. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 6 o'clock with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale. Then Alex will join Joey for Puck Drop at 7. The Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
So are the Cardinals actually a draft and develop team?
Absolutely.
Because they said a lot yesterday about how they need to get back to their foundation as an organization and how when they've been good, they are a draft and develop team.
Yeah.
Am I supposed to believe this? I'm just supposed to take this at face value and be like, yeah, Cardinals, draft and develop.
Have they ever lied to you?
Memphis Mafia, you've got Jordan Walker, Quinn Matthews, J.J.
Watt.
I'm talking about the good teams.
These are good teams. Did you hear Bill DeWitt Jr. say this is an exciting
He
group?
loves watching them, even though every game I went to, I didn't see him this year.
If I'm a Cardinals fan right now, I'm excited about what this product is.
Hell yeah, brother.
Hell yeah. High five
Yeah.
again. We're doing a lot of high fives today. That's what the front office was doing yesterday after the press conference. Way to go, Mo.
Yeah.
Woo! Bill, that was
Whoa.
Bill, great recovery when I tossed it to you and you weren't ready. Incredible recovery.
He powered through. The microphone guy was the one that didn't have to run.
I didn't realize I was supposed to use that one.
It was a really good
They were
press.
supposed to ask the third any questions.
Bill,
Well, they didn't. Mo threw it to him.
you know what Bill the third did when Mo asked him? It's the Michael Scott one where he looks and goes,
Bill's probably thumbing through all of his files. Shoot, where's revenue?
Oh my God,
revenue, page 765.
We don't know revenue. We don't know revenue.
Later.
come back to me, Mo. Come back to me. Talk minor
He
leagues.
wrote down in big bold letters 2.85. And it's 2.85. Do not mess this one up.
And then he held up a sign that says, don't ask me
that's
questions.
That's unfair.
This is awkward.
They were fine yesterday.
press conference sounds a lot
They were fine yesterday. Okay. That was a lie.
I thought Mo did an okay job.
Yeah, until he
Yeah,
had
which one?
Until he made the Yeah, which
No.
one?
No, which
No,
press
which
conference?
one? First, second, or third?
I thought
third
his
wasn't
best
good.
performance was actually the one after the press conference, but with the
chance.
assembled media.
No chance. He was such a.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say the word.
He snubbed one of the reporters
Two
because
of
they
them.
wrote a bad article about him.
He
that was
snubbed two of
Hoffman.
them.
He was real mad
He
about
also
it.
snubbed Denton.
Yeah.
Denton says, last question.
And then he asked
and then
another
came
one.
back for another. He said,
That was
"No,
funny.
No, you said last question.
See?
You have a problem.
That was funny.
And then later, he was like, well, I have to hold Hines' hand through this process. So 2 of the 3 press conferences weren't great.
Yeah, I thought he did well in that
He didn't
one.
do well.
I thought the second best one was the one that he did with Jim Hayes.
That was another one with a tone problem.
That was the one that you're talking about, where he said
It was your second
if
best one.
they could have fired me today, but then they would have had to start all over, and that would have been a disaster.
Talk
It's
about
like, oh,
pumping
boy.
your own tires.
And then I thought that his worst performance was actually on the stage. I thought he was fine. I thought his written statement was really well written, actually.
It's hard to screw that one up.
Now we just need BK to come through with that. I don't want to get political.
Anyways,
What are we talking about?
Yeah, where are we right now?
I had something that
I know.
Chose
That's
against
why
it.
I said it. I know you like a...
All right. I do like politics. We can do a podcast on that at a later date.
Is that with the dad pod, or are you going to do a whole nother
Yeah,
one?
we can do that tight end.
You do too many podcasts, man.
Yeah.
Drafting and developing. Cardinals are telling you that's what we got to get back to. That's our roots. That's who we are as an organization. Do you guys agree the 2004 team was the best one that they've had in our lifetimes?
Well, this offense was compared to 2004.
Sure. But can we...
Yeah.
2004, best team. I know they didn't win the World Series, but that was the best team that we've seen in our lives, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here are the players that were on the 2004 roster that saw meaningful playing time that were not drafted or developed by the Cardinals.
Loved this roster.
Mike Matheny, Tony Womack, Edgar Renteria, Alex's favorite player that he says that they need to get back to. They might have that in Mason Wynn. Drafted and developed, by the way.
We'll see offense.
Scott Rowland, Jim Edmonds, Reggie Sanders, John Mabry, Larry Walker, Jason Markey, Woody Williams, Jeff Suppan, Chris Carpenter, Izzy, Cal Eldred, Julio Tavares, Ray King, Steve Klein, Kiko Calero. Those were all the players that were not drafted and developed on the 2004 Cardinals. Now here's the list of drafted and developed. Ray Langford, who was drafted in 1987 and was on his last legs, literally, that's why Larry Walker was here, in 2004. Marlon Anderson,
Great
So
outfielder.
Taguchi, Matt Morris, legit #1 starter, Yadier Molina, who played 50 games that season, and of course, Albert Pujols. The Cardinals draft and develop actually better today than they did then. What they don't do is develop stars. And I'm sorry, but I don't know that you can do anything to recreate what you did with Yadier Molina or Albert Pujols, man. What the Cardinals are essentially trying to tell us is, man, we got to find a way to get one of them Yadies or one of them Alberts.
But without trading for one and without signing one in free agency.
And I don't know how you do that. I don't. It's super easy to say, like, let's rub our fingers together and hope that eventually over time, like if we wait long enough, one of those guys is going to come through our system. That's not how this works, dude. like the overwhelming likelihood is J.J. Weatherholt never becomes one of those guys. Jordan Walker never becomes one of those guys. Brendan Donovan certainly is not. Lars Nootbaar not going to be that. Gorman's not going to be that. They can all be really good players and never live up to what we're talking about here. So to me, that was what was so frustrating. What has been so frustrating about the way that the organization has been talking over the last while, not just yesterday. I don't think that it's true that they used to be a draft and develop team. I think what they missed on was not the young players. I think what they're missing on right now is Goldie and Arenado, dude. They whiffed. It didn't work. They got 1 year where everything came together, but otherwise they've been like seesawing of who has the good year in any individual season or even in individual games. They almost never were great together. You want to get good again really quickly? Do this retool thing yesterday, refresh whatever you want to call it that they talked about yesterday for next year, reset your books, and then bet right on a star position player that's in his prime. That's what you got right in the 2000s.
Yeah.
That's what you're missing.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to get back to what made you successful for a long period of time, you're going to have to change your philosophy away from this draft and develop to, hey, we're going to have to go out there and be creative on the trade market, because that's what cornerstone pieces helped the Cardinals continue their success. Go away from the 2004. Go to the 2011 one. You had Matt Holliday. You had Lance Berkman. Yes, of course, you had Albert Pujols. David Freese was an acquisition that you developed, but you traded when he was younger. You've always been the team that has gone out there and say, hey, we'll bank on this guy having a career renaissance, whether he was young or an older veteran. You are not a draft and develop team. You're hey, we drafted and developed 2 superstars, and then everything else has been complementary pieces.
I think people might have misheard me, and that's on me. I should have been more clear. The first list of players that I mentioned, never mind. I misread. Marlon Anderson, not drafted and developed by the Cardinals. Every other player that I mentioned there was, which gets even more to the point. Yeah. The Cardinals had 5 guys on that roster that was one of the best that they've had that were drafted and developed internally. And really, it's Albert and Yadi are the guys that we're talking about here. Alex is 100% correct. Cardinals are a draft and develop our core position player group. Draft and develop supplemental pieces in the rotation. Nice arms in the bullpen. The Cardinals are a target and acquire our superstars. That's the way they do it. That's the way they have done it for 30 years, dude, dating all the way back to Mark McGwire. Hell, even before that, you go back to some of their superstars. Ozzie Smith, right? Lou Brock. These guys were acquired via other organizations. There's no harm in doing that. You can continue to do that today. But these guys that I mentioned outside of Mark McGwire, they were acquired in their prime. They weren't acquired when they were 31, 32, 33 years old, so you get the back end of their careers while they're fading away into the sunset. You acquired them early on, and you bet on them that they were going to be stars. That's what the Cardinals need to get back to. You want to get back to being great again? That's the way to do it. Develop your core, and then supplement that with superstars. Plug that in to a team that's ready to win. And I think they have the chance to do that going into next offseason. Coming up next, Gabe DeArmond joins us here on 101 ESPN. With Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. Happy to go out to the 101 ESPN hotline to be joined by my friend and the publisher over at PowerMizzou.com. He's Gabe DeArmond. He's been with Rivals for the last 20-plus years. Now they are making the move to 24/7 Sports. They did that earlier today. It's the same website, PowerMizzou.com, but now when you go over there, it'll be a part of the 24/7 network. Gabe, congratulations, man. How you doing today?
Well, it is 12:53, and I'm just now emptying my dishwasher. So that's about how I'm doing. How are you guys doing?
Doing really well, man. So I want to get into your website move here in just a minute, but it's a big week for Mizzou football. They have what we all thought coming into the season would be their first real test. Now, it hasn't ended up being that way. They've played 2 games where they definitely got tested already. Gabe, they had their media day earlier today. What are you most interested in this matchup between Mizzou and Texas A&M?
Well, let me tell you, it's not the media day. I am pretty sure that somebody took Theo Weiss and Brady Cook and Johnny Walker before they went in the room and said, okay, now your goal is to say nothing. Be as boring as you possibly can be. And talk about how loud Kyle Field is, too. That's fine. But, no, I think Texas A&M has one way to win this game, and that is a game that's probably 24 points or lower. If this game gets to 27, I don't see how Missouri doesn't win it, because Missouri, we know Missouri's offense has not been great, right? It's had some issues. It's kicked way too many field goals. I mean, Texas A&M, against an FBS team, has not exceeded 26 points this year. I went back and looked. They basically scored the average of what those teams are giving up. Missouri is giving up an average of 12 points a game. Now, I think A&M probably scores a little more than 12, but I don't know how they win this game if it requires getting into the high 20s, low 30s.
What is your level of confidence in the offense? No, let me rephrase this. What is your level of panic with the offense right now? Because if you look on social media, you will see that it is quite high for most Mizzou fans, especially surrounding the quarterback. I don't share all of that, given what we saw from this team literally 1 year ago, but I think some of the concerns are legitimate. Where do you fall on this, Gabe?
It needs to be better, but here's the thing. I think they are incredibly close. I mean, I've used this stat so much. I figured it out after the Vandy game. They've had 45 drives. 36 of them have crossed midfield.
Wow.
They have scored about as few points as possible. I mean, 80% of their drives are reaching opposing territory. And we've seen with Blake Craig's leg, like that means you're in field goal range, right? So they've missed, 4 or 5 field goals. They've attempted 3 more field goals than anybody else in the country. So there's been a lot of talk of red zone struggles, and they have struggled in the red zone, but they struggle when they get to the 35. I mean, they get to the 45, 40, 35 almost every drive, and then they just don't go anywhere else. So what that tells me is you're missing one play a drive. You know, you need to make one more play every other drive. And this is an offense that's going to be scoring 35, 38 points.
I also think, and I mean, this has been beaten to hell, but it's that big play, right? They're missing the opportunity to, instead of having to use the 12-play drives to do what you're talking about, to finish the drive. It's the ability to score from the 40-yard line, where you just throw it over the top. And Marquise Johnson made a couple of those last year early in the season. Luther made a few of them. We saw by the end of the season Theo getting involved with that as well. Do you still have confidence that they can get that back, given the fact that it's basically the same players as it was last year?
Well, look, if Nate Noel's going to go out and average 125 yards a game, at some point they got to bring somebody up and help out on that, right? And then, like last year, they threw the ball all over in the first 5 games of the year, and teams said, we got to come up. And then they just handed the ball to Cody Schrader for 472 consecutive plays, and it worked. So this year, maybe it's the opposite. The other thing is, when we say big play, we always talk about the 50 yards in the air throw. There is nothing that says a receiver can't take a 6-yard pass and make it a 60-yard touchdown. Luther's capable of that. He hasn't really done it this year. He did on a 19-yarder, but we haven't seen it. I mean, how many of Chase Daniel's career passing yards were Denario Alexander and Jeremy Maclin going, hit me with the 5-yard slant, and I'm just going to go 70. You know, it doesn't have to be a 50-yard pass.
It doesn't, and I think that they have the guys, especially with Luther Burden, that are capable of it. I mean, we saw it last week, or 2 weeks ago, I guess now, with what he was able to do with that touchdown. And we saw it against Boston College as well. He's capable of taking any play 25 yards, probably as good as any player that Missouri has had in that regard. I just want to see it again. And Gabe, we're talking to Gabe DeArmond of PowerMizzou.com here on 101 ESPN. If Mizzou wins this weekend, if they are able to get this thing done against Texas A&M on the road, you've got 2 games that you should win against Massachusetts. I still can't believe that game's actually being played at UMass, but here we are. And then Auburn. What does that set up against Alabama?
Well, there's 2 things. First of all, Missouri to me is, I don't want to use the word guarantee because it's college football, right? But as close as you can be to guaranteed of going to Tuscaloosa with everything it wants on the table. Worst case scenario, they're going to lose to A&M this week. UMass is awful, and Auburn isn't much better than awful. So they should be at worst 6-1 going to Tuscaloosa. Now, you win this A&M game, you're talking 7-0, and you're probably looking at like 1 versus 5 in the game of the week. In a game, and this is why this week is so big. If Missouri wins this game, they don't have to win the Alabama game. They go down there and take a loss, and like you don't want to get beat 63-10, but they can go down there and take a loss, and as long as they're reasonably competitive, it takes absolutely nothing off the table. Now you lose this weekend, then you kind of start looking, then you're in Ole Miss territory of, I mean, we can lose another game, but if we lose that game, we don't really have another game on our schedule that's going to be a good win. And then 10-2, I don't feel great about.
That's where I am as well. I said coming into the year, like 10-2, if it's the right way, and if things break your way, maybe you can make it work. But 11-1 is probably what you end up needing, given what their schedule is this year in the SEC to be able to get into the college football playoff. Gabe DeArmond.
There's chaos, or you're talking 9-3 ACC title game BC and 8-4 South Carolina and 8-4 Oklahoma.
Gabe DeArmond is our guest. You can find his great work over at PowerMizzou.com. I've been a subscriber at PowerMizzou for more than a decade now. It is well worth my money. I enjoy it every single day, going over there, getting the latest with Gabe DeArmond. And Gabe, it's a new look now. You guys are over at 24/7. It's the same site, PowerMizzou.com. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing, what's available for Mizzou fans that are listening right now in the audience.
Yeah, we literally basically picked up our house and moved it to a new neighborhood. Our whole staff is there. We're doing a lot of the same articles, right? The difference is we have a national support team of football and basketball recruiting people and football and basketball coverage. I did a 3-hour live show this morning. By the way, I don't know how you guys talk for 3 hours a day. It's unbelievable.
We have commercial breaks, Gabe.
We had 11 guests on. We had people that cover national football, national college basketball, recruiting, all that. So we have all this extra stuff at our disposal that we haven't had in the past. And so it's not just the 4 of us. Now it's the 4 of us with this team of people around that I think is going to add a lot to it. So we're excited about it. It's, the best part is just go type PowerMizzou.com. You're going to find us. It is a new subscription. You're going to have to sign up. I can't get you your money back on the old one, but we're giving you 75% off. And so, you don't even have to skip the fancy coffee. Just skip the cheap coffee once a month for the next year, and we're set.
Yeah, $225 a month for the next year. It's well worth the price of admission. Check them out, PowerMizzou.com, 24/7 Sports, new partnership there between Gabe DeArmond of PowerMizzou.com and 24/7. Gabe, congratulations, man. Thanks so much for hopping on with us today. We'll talk with you again soon, my friend.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks.
Absolutely. That's Gabe DeArmond. Again, PowerMizzou.com is where you can go to find them. It is well worth your time. If you're a Mizzou fan and you're not a subscriber, you're missing out on a bunch of different information that he's got. Great analysis over there as well. And just frankly, Gabe's one of my best friends, and I love the work that they do over there, and I think it's well worth your time. So check him out. Give him a chance. Again, if you do it annually, it's $25 for the next year. Check him out over there. Again, PowerMizzou.com is where you can go to find it if you're a Missouri fan. All right, we're certainly going to be breaking down this Mizzou versus Texas A&M game over the next few days. It's one of the biggest games in college football this week, so we'll do plenty of that. But I do want to get back to the Cardinals. Can they sell you on what they're trying to accomplish here? Because I thought going into yesterday, not that hard of a sell, and then I heard how they were going to do it, and it felt a little bit more difficult to me. We'll hear from you guys. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line, and the mic drop features on the 101 ESPN app. Can you be sold on what the Cardinals are trying to accomplish? Talk about it next year on 101 ESPN. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. So can the Cardinals sell you on what they're trying to accomplish here? We'll talk to Jeremy Rutherford about that here in just about 10 minutes or so. I know that sounds weird. Wait, why are you talking to the Blues guy about it? He texted us yesterday about the Cardinals press conference. I do want to ask him, as just a Cardinals fan, take yourself away from the media. As a Cardinals fan, what did JR experience yesterday with what he saw in the press conference? We'll ask him about that coming up here in just about 10 minutes or so. But Alex, yesterday, the Cardinals sat up at the podium and on the stage and tried to answer all of the questions that the media had for them. And the media is asking these questions on behalf of the fans. That is their job, right? And they were asked, hey, how do you plan to sell this product? You know, you guys are taking this step back. Previously it was about, hey, come see a winner. That's what we sell here in St. Louis. Now, they didn't always meet those expectations, but that was the sales pitch when you get to this time of the year. We're going to make moves that help us win, and you're going to buy tickets because you can see a winner. That's the sale. It's super easy. A little harder when you come out in, October and say we're not doing that again this upcoming season. So what's the sales pitch? Here's Bill DeWitt III.
What's the reason to come in 2025?
Yeah, we're working on our game plan. We're doing a lot of work looking at ways to improve and freshen up the game day experience for our fans. We'll see some new things next year in that regard. Look, we got a really nice core of young players, so I don't think we're going to be short of marketing messages to our fans in terms of what to look for and what to be excited about. This is something that we haven't really done in a long time, or at least in our tenure. We're looking at different ways to market the product and the experiences of being down here.
Oh, you guys excited?
They're going to update their game day experience.
What do you guys think they could sell you?
Nothing.
That would, because this is the thing, it's super easy to criticize that answer, right? But if we're being honest, if you put yourself into Bill DeWitt III's shoes, who's in charge of the business operations for the Cardinals, that's his job. How do I get you to come to the stadium? That's his job. So if it sounds like he's trying to sell you something, he is. That's the job description. What can you do other than what he just said, which is, hey, we've got some young players that we hope you guys will want to come see, and we're going to try to freshen up the game day experience. Is there anything else he can do to try to sell you?
No, I don't think so. Like, if you're going off of the business model, there's nothing you can do to try and sell me on coming to see this Cardinals team. Like, if I want to go to a Cardinals game, I'll go to a Cardinals game. You see how you sell me on it? Cheap tickets and cheap food and drinks. That's how you sell me on it. But if that's the product, and if we're going to go through this whole rodeo of, hey, we're fixing our minor league so we can be good in a couple of years and blah, 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 that's not going to make me want to come to see the product. Like, sure, you've got some young players that could be stars in the future. I'll get excited once I see that. But you can't sit here and say, well, we're going to update our game day experience and make sure that you're going to enjoy the opportunity to come to the ballpark. No, those people are going to come to the ballpark no matter what. The fans that are upset of how this team has been run over the last couple of years, you're not going to change their opinion until actual changes take place.
Yeah, and I don't even know if, you mentioned come and see a young team. There'll be some people that will want to go see some of the guys like a Mason Wynn, a Brendan Donovan, Walker, all that. I don't even know if it matters if even one of them just becomes a superstar, because what do they need to do to bring people in? They've got to win. That's the number one thing that will drive the ticket sales. That's the number one thing that drives this whole thing of we're going to look into our game day experience. I can tell you what'll be improving your game day experience: winning. It's just that simple. They were above 500 team this year, and there were empty seats basically from mid-August till the end of the season, and they were kind of in it, but they were also a team that was right around 500. It's not like this was a 70-win club like I think they can be next year. Hey, there's no way to sell anything if it's not winning baseball. That is the number one thing that drives ticket sales for Cardinals baseball.
Agreed. It's what sells tickets everywhere.
Yes.
Like, you want to go see a team that doesn't draw? Tell me the record. I've got a pretty good idea as to whether or not they're going to be having a winning record based on their attendance. The Cardinals actually, tickets-wise, did really well this year, given what the circumstances were. The last 2 years, they should be thanking their lucky stars that they have as big of a support base as they do. It takes a long time for that to erode. Now, they're at risk of doing that if things don't get back on track sooner rather than later. But there's no way to sell this to fans, man. Not for the in-person experience, for people to continue to buy tickets. That just comes down to winning. And if you're not going to plan on winning as much, I think fans will be understanding of that if you sell it the right way. And that's where I think things get very important here, is the messaging has got to improve. It has to. This is not about the buying of tickets next season. It's about how do you maintain the support and the fans that you currently have. How do you prevent losing those people that have been customers for 20, 30 years, that over the next couple of seasons, hey, man, they might find other stuff to do with their time when they know I don't have to be invested on a day-to-day basis the way that I previously was with a team that's not. It's not that they're not trying to win. It's that they're not emphasizing that above all else, right? I think a lot of fans are understanding of that if you message it properly. Look at what the Blues are doing. They have their faults, man. They've missed. They shouldn't have let Petro walk. I think they made a mistake in letting David Perron walk. I think they gave out some bad contracts that are currently on their books. But they've admitted as much, and now they're trying to turn the page, and they're messaging really, really well, most importantly. And we'll see if they get it right with some of their young with their young core. The Cardinals need to sell who they are, what they're trying to accomplish, and how they're going to go about this so much better. Yesterday, they couldn't even answer the basic questions, dude. What are you investing in? I don't know. I left the press conference yesterday saying, I don't know the answer. How many people are you planning to add to the minor leagues? I don't know. What are your revenues right now? Can't tell you. What exactly is your payroll planning to be next year? I don't know. So what does this mean for your veteran players? We'll see. So you guys are cutting $50 million-ish in payroll at the major league level. What would you say you're increasing the spending on the minor league level? Like 8 to 12%. Do we know what their actual spending was previously, though? Nope. No clue. So yesterday you left with these concepts of a plan, let's say, and you leave as a fan having no clear picture as to what the future holds for your team, the organization that you love so dearly. I don't know, man. I don't view that as great messaging, and it goes way beyond what Bill DeWitt III said there. He's got nothing that he can sell. He's between a rock and a hard place. Good luck.
Yeah. You want to sell anything?
It's bigger than that.
You want to sell anything to the fans? Sell honesty.
100%.
You want to sell anything to this fan base, you need to be upfront. And honestly, you failed your first test because you had a press conference that was expecting honesty, and you failed it. You're going to have to reinvent the wheel with how this Cardinals team approaches their fan base, because sitting here saying we're going to update the game day experience, and again, I understand Bill DeWitt III, what you got to do. You're the business side. That's what you're saying.
He didn't really have a good answer. He could have said, and what I mean by that is
caught him off guard.
Well, what I mean by that is he could have been asked that question. He could prepare all he wanted for that. He couldn't come up with a good answer because of what he's got to sell.
It all came down to his dad, Bill DeWitt Jr. Yeah. That's where it started. And if you're not going to go with the honest approach about where this team is at, how you got here, and what the actual plans are moving forward, I'm talking flip out the blueprint and put it out in front of Cardinals fans.
And honestly, I think he's right. What they need to do is refresh the game day experience. Add some more stuff. When they brought in that Budweiser Terrace in the upper deck of the right field.
Smart idea.
I love it. That's where me and my wife, whenever we go to games without Luka, that's where we spend our time. That kind of stuff does. There's a certain fan base segment of the fan base that wants more stuff like that, or like the kids' corner that they've got in the outfield experience. That if Alex or me are going with our kids, hey, I bet you, Stalter's talked about this in the past, you should probably spend half the game over there.
That's what we did last year when we took our 3-year-old.
So that kind of stuff does matter. The game day experience matters. They refreshed their beer selection a couple of years ago, where they had more craft beers. Hey, that certainly that was something that helped me with my game day experience.
$3 hot dogs, T-bones there.
The Blues a few years ago did this with their concessions, where they added in a bunch more local offerings. Yep. That matters. So that stuff is important. But ultimately, it gets back to, hey, is the baseball team good? That's what's going to draw you into the crowd. And then the game day atmosphere will matter accordingly. But, do dollar night. Have hot dogs for $1, right?
Oh, different
have
dollar
pop
night.
Dogs.
Pop dogs? What's a pop dog?
Popcorn and hot dog for $1.
Is that like one of those push pops? It's like a popsicle, but it's a hot dog at the end of the Tootsie Roll?
I mean.
That's ugh.
You can do all of that stuff, but ultimately it comes down to, is the team good? Messaging's got to improve. That's what they've got to get better, and they've got to be honest.
Yeah, they'll get that down.
Coming up next, Jeremy Rutherford joins us to talk about the Blues for sure, but I also want to get his perspective on the press conference yesterday, just as a Cardinals fan and a native St. Louisan. We'll talk to JR about that next year on 101 ESPN. Jeremy Rutherford wears multiple hats on a daily basis. He's a father. He's a writer, Blues insider for The Athletic. He joins us here as an analyst on 101 ESPN, and he's a Cardinals fan. And that's what I want to start with today. Jeremy Rutherford joins us via the 101 ESPN hotline, Blues insider for The Athletic. You can follow him on Twitter at JP Rutherford. We will talk to him about the very important game tonight between the Blues and the Blue Jackets. Alex, by the way, is going to be on the broadcast tonight. He's going to be the play-by-play man. So you should be listening to that right here on 101 ESPN. Blues versus Blue Jackets. Pregame starts at 6. Puck drop coming up tonight at 7 o'clock. But, JR, I want to start with your other hat, which is as a Cardinals fan. Because yesterday was a significant day in Cardinals history. They basically said we're going in a new direction, and then said everything else that they could over the next 30 minutes that suggested maybe we're not going in such a different direction. JR, what was your reaction to that press conference yesterday as a fan of the organization, as a fan of this team?
BK, you're always trying to get people in trouble, huh? No,
Does it to me, too.
No, it's, I listened to it on purpose. I wanted to hear the message. As a reporter, that's kind of my bread and butter, going to those press conferences. As you drive down to those press conferences, you think of the questions you want to ask and how you want to word them, and you expect what they might say and perhaps how you could ask the question differently. And I thought the reporters in that room, did a good job asking the questions that needed to be asked. As a Cardinal fan, listening to those answers, I felt like they missed a great opportunity to say things that would resonate with the fan base. And listen, I've been listening to the show yesterday, today. You guys are hitting all the high notes. I don't need to repeat those. But I just think that what comes out from those press conferences typically with the Cardinals alienates the fan base even more. And I don't see the logic in it. I don't see the need. Look, you can be proud of what you've accomplished over the years. You can be proud of the organization that you are. And just because you're owning up to some mistakes or trying to look forward, just because you're acknowledging those missteps to the fan base doesn't mean that you didn't do a good job. It doesn't mean that you lose all the credibility that you've built up over the years. So as I watched it yesterday, I honestly felt like, I started at the Post-Dispatch when I was 18, 19 years old. I'm 49 now. 30 years of being at these events, asking questions. I felt like it was poorly handled and one of the worst I had ever seen.
Well, and you've sat in these press conferences with Tom Stillman and Doug Armstrong for the last 3 years, JR. And as a reporter and just as somebody, the fan that's listening, you can hear the honesty when they're talking about the team compared to what we witnessed yesterday, where it just didn't feel like there was honesty there.
Yeah, and I do give the Blues credit for that. And it's not because I cover them, and when I go down there tonight, I'm going to run into Doug Armstrong or Tom Stillman. That's not the reason. I just feel like there has been some honesty, some transparency about what they want to do. Not all the time. I mean, I've asked Doug Armstrong about the Alex Pietrangelo decision a number of times, and, obviously he wants to wait until several years go by and until he fully addresses that. That's what he's told me on a couple times, but yet some other times he's commented on the situation. So, there's not always transparency when it comes to the questions, but I think big picture, by and large, Doug's done a good job of that. Tom's done a good job of that. They want to let the fans know where they stand. And I'll say this, and maybe the Cardinals owners / management don't care about this. When I go out in public, one of the number one things I hear from the Blues fans is, we thank them for being honest. We can be on board with this. I'm going to buy tickets. I'm going to continue to go down there because they're being honest with me.
I think that's the biggest thing to me that is frustrating, JR, is if you give people a plan, especially here, they'll listen to you. They'll take you at your word, but you have to explain to them what the plan is. Like last year, Doug Armstrong made the expectations very clear as to what he thought that team could be. He didn't sell you that they were something that they weren't. He said, hey, we think maybe we can try to contend for a playoff spot. And that's pretty much what they were by the end of the season. Now, it took a roundabout way to get there, but that was what they were. This offseason, he pushed a little bit forward. He tried to move a little closer to the end zone. And he's not telling you right now, hey, we're a ready-made product. he's being honest about where they are as an organization, and they've started that transition plan to Alex Steen. What frustrated me yesterday, and what has frustrated me for a while about the Cardinals, is that they seem to want you to believe that everything they're telling you is gospel and it is truth because they say it is so. And then we can watch the games, we can watch the team, we can see what they're fielding as a product and know this is not what they are selling me that it is. And so I'll be very curious to see how that ends up applying to a potential rebuild, refresh, whatever they want to call it. That is not a way to get the messaging across to your fan base if that's the direction that you're going. You have to be more in line with what Doug Armstrong's doing there.
Yeah, 100%. And you don't have to show all your notes. You don't have to come out in that press conference and say, this is what we're going to do. But it's so clear and so obvious to a very intelligent Cardinal fan base that when you go out and you make some moves, like you sign Sonny Gray to the long-term deal, and now here we are less than a year later, and we're talking about, moving him to shed some payroll. Just using that as an example, there are so many situations, I think, with the Cardinals, young players up and down. We're going to give them a chance, and then, okay, now we're not going to give them a chance. And so I think there's so many situations that the fans can look at and say, what is going on here? And again, to repeat, they don't need to come out and explain every decision or every detail. I get that. I get it with the Blues when I know that Doug's not giving out every detail. But I do think that if you bring some honesty to the table, guys, we don't know everybody's reaction to that yesterday, but I'm sure there are some people, I think I saw it on social media, not buying tickets next year. If you just came out and said this is what we're going to do, there's people who aren't canceling yesterday. And whatever you want to think about the fan base, and if you're in that Cardinal management position, that's who makes things run in terms of showing up, not showing up, believing in the product, not believing in the product. Can you do these things that you want to do? Resources moving forward, can you put some money into them? It comes down to the fans showing up. And beyond that, in St. Louis, guys, this is a pride thing. Like, these fans want this team to be good, to be competitive. Sometimes you're going to have to go through, you guys keep calling it the refresh. Sometimes those things are going to have to happen. But just be honest with it and don't come across like you've got all the answers, because we've seen for the past couple of years that you don't. Talking with Jeremy Rutherford of The Athletic, our Blues insider. So, Jerry, on the Blues side, Alexandrov gets sent down. What? Hockey. I know, back to hockey for you here, just like you expected. So Alexandrov clears, and I was looking at this. The Blues roster now is at 16 forwards, 9 defensemen, and 3 goaltenders. You've got to get that down to 23 by the start of the season next Tuesday against the Seattle Kraken. How do you buy this team right now in terms of where they're going? Is it 14 forwards and 7 defensemen, or 13 forwards and 8 defensemen? Yeah, so I asked Drew Bannister that question yesterday, and he said they're still working through that. Obviously, he might have an idea, but can't come out directly and say it. But it's a situation, typically you go 14 forwards, 7 defensemen. The Blues in the past have gone 13 forwards and 8 defensemen. But you have a situation with Sundqvist. Is he going to be ready for the start of the season? Probably could be, but they're not going to push it. Brandon Saad, obviously we know his situation with his family expecting a child. He could miss a game, 2 games, 3 games. So I expect at least Saad to be on the roster initially. And that means that they could have to go 14 forwards and bring an extra 4 to 2 on that trip, and that would put them with 7 defensemen. So you got a situation tonight with the preseason game against Columbus that you're going to see Scott Prnovich, Tyler Tucker, P.O. Joseph, and Drew Bannister said in the past couple of days, all these guys are playing for their job. So if they only keep 7, you're going to see one of those 3 make it, the other 2 not. P.O. Joseph has played some pretty good hockey, especially PK. Bannister said he liked him in that area. He might have the upper hand on those 3 guys. If there's 1 spot, if there's 2, then you could see Prnovich stick around and Tucker go, I would imagine. But all that coming down to these last 3 preseason games. JR, last question that I've got for you. Who's the player that's generating the most buzz at this year's camp? Whether that's a guy that is expected to make the opening night roster, maybe it's somebody that's already been sent back down to the AHL. But who's the player that's generated the most buzz this year at training camp or in preseason games for you? Well, I think that Bolduc is a name that we keep talking about, and rightly so. He's a guy who you thought, okay, maybe he had a chance, and now he's got a chance. He's likely going to be in the top 6 on opening night. And even if Saad were on the roster, Bolduc might be in a top 6 spot. But I know you've heard a lot of that name, Zachary Bolduc. I'm going to give you the other name, Dylan Holloway. Like, everybody talked about these offer sheets. It was a big deal. You added 2 young players to your roster. but there was a lot of emphasis on Broberg just because 6'4", 212, tall, lanky, left side defenseman. That's great. Let's not overlook Dylan Holloway. This guy's got some upside. You know, he's labeled a middle six forward, but we saw the speed the other night in the preseason game, scored a couple goals. I know it's preseason. I think he's a huge upgrade to this team, and I think he's a guy who's generating some buzz.
JR, we appreciate the time as always, man. I enjoy when we're able to talk to you as a fan as much as when we talk to you as a reporter or an insider. So thanks so much for that earlier today, and we will talk with you again next week, my friend.
Yeah, for sure. It's always tough because, you know, sometimes you hear this Blues fan base, you know, going off the rails a little bit. And as a reporter, you think, okay, come on, let's be realistic here. But then once you shift the baseball and you talk about something, you know, that I've followed for a long time as a lifelong St. Louis, and all of a sudden that fan comes out in you, right? You got to be a little careful to balance the two.
It's a beautiful thing.
We always
you
go
can't
off the
lose
rails.
all of that, man. If you're going to do this for a living, I do think there has to be something inside of you that still enjoys sports, and even if you're not a fan of a specific team, you can appreciate what it all brings out of you and the competition. That's part of it, man. That's what makes it beautiful.
Well, you get Katie Wu to make all the sense for it, so she'll be the reporter in this situation. I'll be the fan. But no, thanks, guys.
There you go. You got it. It's Jeremy Rutherford, Blues insider for The Athletic. Find all of his great work over there at The Athletic and on Twitter at JP Rutherford. Alex, there was a great piece that was just posted a little bit ago by Jeff Jones, and I want to continue our conversation about the Cardinals with this because he wrote about something that I've kind of been banging the drum on, but I think he actually articulated it better than I have at any point in the last 48 hours. If the Cardinals are slashing this payroll and saying that they're reinvesting it into the minor league system, is that just we take them at their word for that, or is there some math that should be taking place here? We'll talk about that, how the Cardinals can explain this next year on 101 ESPN. Hey, it's BK, and if you want to win the most money possible this year in the Major League Baseball postseason, the place to do so is on the Circa Sports app in Illinois. Alex, I want to bet on the Yankees, the Astros, the Phillies, one of those three teams to win the World Series. If I do that over on FanDuel, I'm making 4-1, 7.5 to 1, or 4-1 odds. Over on the Circa Sports app, it's plus 425, 9 to 1, and plus 450. My favorite bet in the postseason is the Astros to win the World Series. 9 to 1 on Circa, plus 750 on FanDuel. I'm winning more money by betting on Circa.
You're going small, BK. I'm going big because I'm putting together, look, there's 4 baseball games today, which means I'm putting together an 8-leg parlay. This is why I use the Circa Sports app, because if I do that same 8-leg parlay, put $10 down, I could win $1,700. But if I do it on Circa Sports, I'm getting $1,800 if they all hit, because they don't limit you based off of your winnings. You need to download the app today for all of the postseason action for NFL and college football, hockey starting up. It's the perfect app for all of your sports betting needs. If you or someone you know may have a problem with gambling, call 1-800-GAMBLER or text ILGAMB to 833-234.
Terry Hendricks here with a Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Today, the Major League Baseball playoffs get underway as Game 1 in the wild card round start. Tigers and Astros are getting ready to have first pitch, and then Royals will take on the Baltimore Orioles later tonight, and then Mets at Brewers and Braves at Padres. And tonight here on 101 ESPN, Blues back in action as they take on the Columbus Blue Jackets. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 6 o'clock. Puck drop at 7 with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale. This Sports Center update is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
I'm going to read you something from Jeff Jones' piece earlier today in the Belleville News-Democrat, Alex. He said what I've been trying to get across over the last couple of days, I think way more eloquently than I have at any point over the last couple of days. So credit to Jeff Jones for what I'm about to read. Doing the math a few times in a row doesn't make it make any more sense than yesterday. Your calculator is not lying to you. Something in how the Cardinals are describing their new direction simply doesn't add up. The Cardinals plan to cut payroll in 2025. John Mozeliak emphasized that during Monday's press conference. No one was quite prepared to give the details about that cut, the players that it could affect, or even what next year's roster could look like. Bill DeWitt III deferred questions regarding possible on-field expectations to Mozeliak, and Mozeliak declined to answer that question. He then continued, and this is where I think he does a really good job of articulating what I've been trying to say. Doing math on radio is not easy. It is not interesting. But basically, if you listen to any of the projections on what teams have made in revenue, now this is not publicly available, but places like Fangraphs, Forbes, etc., they do a pretty good job because Atlanta is a publicly traded company, the Braves are, and you can estimate based upon what they do what other teams are making. It's not perfect, but it gets you into the ballpark of what these teams are bringing in revenue-wise. It's somewhere around for the Cardinals like $375 million in 2023. This year, we all anticipate that's going to be down. I don't know how much. It's probably down. Fewer people going through the stands, fewer people that are interested in your product, probably down. So in this piece, he says, okay, let's say it went down to $360 million, right? Mo said yesterday that they are expected to increase their player development funding by 8 to 12%. So if we just take them at their word, and let's just say, 8 to 12% of $350 million. You're talking about like a $35 million increase, something like that, right? Like a big bump. And that, I don't think they're actually bumping it that much. But let's go down that path, right? If you simply take away Lynn, Gibson, Middleton, Carpenter, Kittredge, Goldie, the guys that are already going to be free agents, that you just decline their options, etc., you end up going to next year and you've already shed significant payroll going into 2025. If you then also start trading players from your roster, Sonny Gray, Nolan Arenado, Miles Michaelis, Ryan Helsley, you continue to shed salary. My question is this. They're clearly not going to be reinvesting. There's no way that you could reinvest that into the minor league system. So what is happening to that money? Is this just now profit for the Cardinals organization? Is it something that they're planning to reinvest as they get better again? Or is this just the new normal for the Cardinals? And now moving forward, they're going to be operating with fewer expenses, and this was their way to do that. It's something that, for me, is the single biggest question regarding what we're witnessing right now, because they didn't have to do this. I think the Cardinals could, if they wanted to, trade the guys that are really old and that are going to be ineffective in a couple of years and move on from some of those guys as well, and pretty quickly pivot with Wilson Contreras sticking around, with a guy like Sonny Gray potentially sticking around, and 2 years from now, get good again. I think they could if they wanted to. They're choosing not to. And I would be curious if you had them in a moment of honesty, why that is. Because the math, to Jeff Schoen's point, he wrote really well. If you want to read the full piece, it's worth your time over in the Belleville News-Democrat. Why are they going about it this way? What is leading to this slashing of payroll at the major league level?
And welcome to just give the fans honesty. Because to me, and I can tinfoil it or we can believe it's real, slashing the prices is putting money in your pocket with the uncertainty of the RSN and not getting money from the television. I don't think the fan base would be with pitchforks and torches if they would have just come out and said that. I think they would have been like, yeah, okay, we get it. If that's why you're slashing prices, fine. But to pull this whole, we have to slash prices so that we have the minor league and we can update that so that we can get back to relevancy and be around the major leagues and the National League and stay in competitiveness, that's where the dishonesty comes into play. Because I don't believe you. You don't have to cut that much money to make your minor league system better. Now, I understand technology is expensive. If you're breaking ground like you should have been 7 years ago on the spring training facility, understandable. If you're updating your minor league system with new coaches, I get it.
And the revenues are going down. I get all of this. I can listen to all of what you're saying here.
But we're talking $35 million just if you go off of that 10%. And you're going to tell me you need to slash more than that?
And we're talking about slashing $35 million in payroll without getting into Contreras, Arenado, Sonny Gray, Ryan Helsley. That's before any of them. That's already slashing $35 million. Are we just assuming that that is going to be reinvested into the minor league system? If so, okay. Now, that's a huge investment. And I suppose credit to the Cardinals if they're just going to spend $35 million on their minor league development system. God bless you.
Ever.
Yeah, you better be elite in prospect development then.
Somebody said, BK, you keep saying that they're unlikely to invest $35 million into the minor league system. What do you think they can invest? Well, the average minor, based on all of the publicly available information on this, and it's few and far between, I'm just full disclosure here, but based on what I've been able to research from other pieces that people have written about minor league systems, it's like $100,000 to get a roving instructor. Good ones, like really good ones. They're making like $200K.
But man, if you give them $1 million, imagine what you're going to get.
And the team that has the most roving instructors in the minor leagues has 17 of them. So let's say the Cardinals are just going to match that. I don't think they're going to, but let's say that they get 17 roving instructors. It's $3.5 million. They already have 5 of them, though. $2.5 million that they're investing in roving instructors. Now you want to talk technology? Some of that stuff, especially early on, it's going to cost them some money. It sure as hell ain't costing $35 million. And the thing that is going to cost the most is that pitching lab. Guys, that's been in development for 7 years. It's hard for me to say that is coming from this chunk of money when it should have been set aside for almost a decade now. They've been preparing to build this, construct it. It was supposed to break ground, I think, pre-COVID. And for a million different reasons, it's been delayed. But the reason why I find all of this to be interesting and why I find it to be so important to continue to hone in on, as an organization, if you're just going cheap, if you're just going the Rays model while also bringing in these massive revenues that continue to be there for this team, dude, that's a huge story. And fans should know that. And it should be disclosed to them if that is the plan. If your plan is we're going to reinvest right now in the minor leagues and then later on we're going to start bringing in some big free agents again and we will eventually reinvest to boost that payroll back up, cool. I just hope that fans know that up front, that that's going to be the plan, and then they can hold you to it. I don't know, man. The math that ain't mathin', that to me is the biggest storyline outside of Chaim Bloom becoming the new president of baseball operations from what they did yesterday.
Yeah, and Mo did say at one point, hey, our expectation is to kind of throw this back in, but it was it wasn't even at the main press conference. It was at press conference 2.0, I think. Yeah, part 2. Why would you not message that to the fans? That's what I don't understand, and it does lead to these kind of questions that we're asking of, are they going to eventually? This is why I hate the idea of when teams start bringing up, we're going to cut payroll. Hey, don't worry. Hey, it'll go back.
Yeah, we'll be back.
I'll believe it when I see it because the Reds have done this, the Pirates have done this, and look, those are different organizations. But I've seen time in, time out again. The Boston Red Sox have done this, where they slash that payroll and they say, it'll be back when we're ready to contend again, and it never goes back. It just kind of goes up a little bit, but never gets close to that level, and that's why, and that's what worries me more is because they've also now have the guy in place that can try the Rays model, a guy that worked with the Tampa Bay Rays and Chaim Bloom. It feels like they are setting up for a potential to use the RSN situation, to use a youth movement as an excuse, as a, hell yeah, look at this, look over here, while we just kind of quietly start doing this, and it doesn't get caught on until about 3-4 years in.
Last thing on this, and I want to talk about this a little bit on the other side. BK and Ferrario Rewind coming up next. Why do you care what they do with their money? It comes from the 314. I'll explain why. Coming up next here on 101 ESPN. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. If you guys missed anything from the show today, be sure to check it out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com, and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It is all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
The vast majority of our show today has been spent talking about the Cardinals press conference that they held yesterday. I know the Fast Lane spent a lot of time on it yesterday after they heard the press conference live during their show. I would imagine they'll have a decent amount of conversation about it once again today. And Alex, one of the things that I've been trying to hone in on is the math that ain't mathin' for them. Because they say that they're going to be slashing payroll. They didn't say it in those specific words, but they said payroll will go down. And it has been reported elsewhere that they are making Sonny Gray available via trade, and that they openly said, hey, listen, we're going to have a conversation with Wilson Contreras and Nolan Arenado, see what this means for their future here in St. Louis as well. Those are big ticket items. I mean, we're talking about between the three of them, $80 million in payroll.
Perfect to allocate down to the minors.
That could potentially go out this season. And if you move on from them, and let's say that you have to eat some of that money, maybe it's still getting rid of $50 million in payroll obligations. Somebody on the text line, Alex, when I brought this up, said, why do you care what the Cardinals do with their money? And here's why. I think it is hugely important what teams do with the money that they bring in. Because I think sometimes it can be a little overstated about how the paying customer is paying for these player salaries, right? It is somewhat true, though. And as a fan, when you're watching the games and giving ratings, and that is how they sell their advertising, or when you're buying their merchandise, or when you're going to the games and paying for the tickets, and all of these different, you're going to Ballpark Village, which is clearly a separate entity and very much not attached to their baseball-related revenues, but, just because they own that as well.
Sounded sarcastic.
When you have all of these different ways that you're supporting the team and you're spending your money on them, you do so with the idea that this is going to be reinvested in my team. And they are going to, in good faith, use the money that I'm spending on my favorite team to make the team better, right? And maybe it doesn't all happen right then and there, but over time, you expect, the money that they get and the money that goes out kind of comes out in a wash. And because the asset, the team, is worth so much as an owner, you're still making money. It's appreciating in value over time. They bought this team for, $150 million, and right now it's worth more than $2 billion, according to Forbes. The ownership group will come out of this fine. Now, that's not a liquid asset, but if they wanted to sell it at any point, I'm going to go out on a limb, guys, say I think they probably could. So why is it important as to what they end up spending? Because it's a good faith negotiation between the fans and the organization as to what the product on the field looks like. And if they stop spending the money and they no longer are in a good faith agreement with fans, well, now we've got a real conversation. And that's what it looks like in Oakland. And that's what it looked like with the Rams. And this is what it can look like. Baltimore. Look at what's happening there right now. Their revenues are here and their expenditures are down here. Boston, revenues here, payroll down here. It can happen, and it happens quick, guys, where suddenly your team stops spending what they once did and they don't reinvest it the way that you expect them to. So I would be very interested in hearing a plan from them. And okay, so if you're spending $70 million less this year, there's no way you can expend all of that in the minor leagues. There's just no way. They can sell you on that. It's not happening. Is that money eventually going to get reinvested into the major league roster? Or is it just, hey, we're going to save this over here now? I don't know. But that's something that I think needs to be answered by the organization.
I think if you're a fan of any team, you should not be in the loop because, of course, somebody owns it. It's their business. But as a fan who's paying your hard-earned money to go to games and invest in the time to go wherever the game is at and buy merchandise, you should kind of be in the loop of what the team's plans are moving forward. And that includes the finances. Because if you're spending your money to go watch a team and yet the product on the field is, for lack of a better word, cheap, and there's money available to invest in that roster, but instead it's just let's keep churning out the cheapness and sell you on we're going to grow the minor league system and we're going to make this prospect pool better. Why would I invest my money into that if you're not being upfront with me? Like, I want honesty with that. So I think people should be concerned about where the money is being spent because that team is investing in your entertainment. And if you're not entertained by it, well, then they're not going to be making money off of it.
Let me put this a different way. Maybe this will be easier. It'd be a better way for me to describe it. Let's say the Cardinals save $50 million this year in payroll, and they spend $10 million down in the minor leagues that they have reinvested from that 50, and they do the same thing again next year, right? And then they push again. They have now, over the course of a 2-year stretch, saved $80 million in obligations compared to what they previously would have expected to spend. Where is that money going? Is it just going directly to the DeWitt's fund? Or is it going to, in 2027, be reinvested into the organization, and they can use that $80 million in savings to really push and to go out there and get a couple of superstar players to plop into the middle of the order. One in the middle of the order, one in the front end of the rotation. Like, I think that is a very important question that should be asked. And I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer, and I don't know how anybody could, because they have not explained it at all. The math that they've described so far doesn't make sense.
T-Bone said earlier, you could say all you want that that's the plan. I wouldn't buy it until I see it, because I know how this team is operated. And if you're going to go off of the mantra of we're going to get back to what we've done in the past of drafting and developing, well, right there is a lie in itself, and we discussed that earlier. So you can say that all you want, that 2027 is when we'll reinvest in this team. I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah. But at least if they had described it that way yesterday, I would have a better idea as to what their plan is. As of right now, I just don't know. I don't know.
I don't think they do.
So we spent the entire show today talking about that.
Day.
Tomorrow, man, I'm
baby.
so excited. We're going to talk hockey. Yes. Alex is going to be on the call tonight for Blues versus Blue Jackets. He got the Battle of the Blue.
I got the curbs
I
that on
can't believe
purpose.
it. Cannot believe it. They've got Alex on the call tonight. Blues versus Blue Jackets. So please tune in for that. Pregame starts at 6 o'clock right here in your home of the Blues, 101 ESPN. We're talking NFL tomorrow. We're talking college football tomorrow. Yes. We're talking Blues tomorrow. Maybe we'll sneak in a little bit of Cardinals as well. For Alex and T-Bone on BK. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow at 11 a.m. The Fast Lane's coming up next.